Seeing none, we'll move on to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion on? Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we adopt the agenda for Council Policies and Priorities Committee regular meeting agenda for Monday, October 3rd, 2022.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the adoption of the previous minutes. Can I get a motion? Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move I move that we approve the minutes as presented from, I believe it's September 6th, from our previous Policies and Procedures meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Are there any questions, any changes, corrections? I have one actually on page 5. It should say, moved by Mayor Dahl, the council direct the CEO to move forward on the marketing of ONET, not marking. So if you're open for a friendly amendment to that.
I am, yes.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? And opposed? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to the, that was as admitted, sorry. We'll move on now to presentations and delegations, and CEO Williams, would you like to present?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Today we have Mr. Michael Weatherick with us, CAO of the South Red Deer Regional Wastewater Commission. So I'll invite Michael to come to the presenter table.
Oops. Excellent.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weatherick.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me. The South Red Deer Commission recently had a strategic planning session and out to review the Commission's role in the community and getting a little bit of communication out to our members and also share some of our operations and future plans. So appreciate the chance to present today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the system overview. Many of you probably are somewhat aware of the system, but I'll give you an idea of how we're structured, how big it is, the amount of capital installed, etc. We'll also talk obviously about the flooding events in June and July and the plans for a emergency storage pond for Olds. It's got a long, difficult history in the past. I know Harvey's been around for most of that past as well, so we'll go over the future plans. And finally, we'll end up with some of the challenges as far as reserves and cost drivers for the Commission overall. So very briefly, the South Red Deer system was built back in about 2012, 2013. Consists of 92 kilometers of pipeline. It's anywhere from 24 inch up to about 34 inch. So those are like fairly large lines. The stations themselves, there's 4 of them. So Olds, Bowden, Innisfail, Penhold, pumps eventually to an odor management facility, which is doing exactly what it describes. There's a lot of H2S generated in wastewater by the time it gets to the city, and that kind of scrubs out it attempts to anyways scrub out the odors that come from the line itself. You can barely see it in this little drawing, but in addition, in the Commission's mandate is to operate what's called the Waskesiu Regional System, and it was built back in the early 80s by Red Deer County to originally serve Penhold and Springbrook, and that was rolled into the Commission in 2013 as well. So collectively, it's about $200 million at least worth of installed capital. The regional system's about 10 years old. The Waskesiu system is getting up to 40 at this point. In terms of governance and management of the Commission, there is a board of directors. Harvey is our current appointment from the town of Olds, and Wanda is the alternate. Wanda was the previous primary contact, so each one of our 6 members appoints a board member. The management of the Commission is really sparse. Myself, I'm the CAO, and then we've got a fellow named Don Monroe, who's our operations supervisor. Don is, we're just talking with Scott, I believe he's 70 this year. He's been in public works and wastewater management for 47 years, and he's a fantastic resource for SRD because prior to joining us, he was the construction inspector working for Stantec, building the SRD system. So he literally knows where every bolt, every valve, every piece of pipe is on the entire system. So he's been a great resource to operate the system. In addition to Don and myself, we just have two other part-time consultants. One's a safety program coordinator and a financial administrator. So the operating or the administrative component of SRD's operating costs is about 1% of the budget, which is quite low compared to what a typical municipal administration cost would be. On the regional system, each one of the towns provides public works operators or sanitary operators to run the local lift station. So it's kind of the day-to-day routine, check the filters, do the readings, those types of things. Anything that's larger scope, project-related, Don and one of our other contract operators will handle that. So in Olds, our main contacts are Dale Rankle and Mike Daly. We'll get to this in the flooding, but the performance by Mike particularly during the flood days, I don't think he went home for a week. I don't know if it was bad luck or what, but he just happened to be on shift pretty much every night when those incidents came. And I talked to him at 4 a.m. and those types of things. He did a fantastic job for us and by extension for the town itself. So very briefly, the lift station, I think everybody knows where it is. It's up on 70th Avenue. It's about half a kilometer north of the Public Works building. It's the only lift station that has a beautiful green tree nearby. That's actually in the farmer's field to the north, but it adds a little greenery to it. It cost about $6.6 million to build in 2013. So in the context of major flooding or any other damage that would happen to it, it's probably double, if not 2.5 times that, to replace that in today's dollars, which would be the commission's responsibility. Olds was the second lift station built. The first one was Innisfail, came on in April of 2013. And then Olds was built, and for a while, those two towns actually shipped their wastewater to Red Deer through the Waskesiu system, waiting for the regional line to be built. So it's been around one of the older ones. Typical average flow rate's about 3,500 cubic meters a day. Pump about 1.3 million cubic meters of wastewater in a year. That's kind of the 5-year average. And we talked about the length of time it takes for wastewater to get from Olds to the OMF and to the plant. When you have your shower, flush your toilet, 9 days from now, it's going to reach the plant. It's quite a while. So that amount of retention time is directly related to how much H2S and other gas problems, scaling, et cetera, various maintenance issues that happen on the line. There is also a receiving station, septic receiving station. About half of the volume that the commission receives comes into the Olds plant, or the Olds lift station, I should say. Most of that comes from the county, Mountain View County, probably the 527 junction, and the other big customer in Olds is actually my other commission, which we'll probably talk about later, the Mountain View Waste Commission. So inflow and infiltration, you're going to hit this a couple times in the next few slides. All communities have inflow and infiltration issues. So this is a chart on monthly basis of what the town of Olds has delivered to SRD. And you can see 2022, the bold purple line, is set records in the amount of water that was usually shipped to the system. 2020 was also a very wet year, yet we didn't have any of these flood-related issues whatsoever. So 2018, 2021 were dry, not only for Olds, but everybody else in the SRD system. And you can clearly see on these charts where you're kind of missing that bubble in May to August is directly related to I&I inflow from spring runoff, rain, those types of events. So there's significant savings not only for Olds but for all commission members to try and mitigate that I&I as much as possible. It costs money to pump it, electricity, chemicals, wear and tear on equipment. It's significant for SRD and also a big cost to the town. So to put that into perspective, looking at the quarterly averages of the dry shoulders, so the first quarter and the fourth quarter, I'll just go back to this chart briefly. So if you look at the left and the right, you'll kind of see a head and shoulders kind of setting there. So in the first quarter and fourth quarter, using those averages compared to the wet summer, you can see it's about $90,000 cubic meters per quarter, give or take, higher in the summer. So that turns out to be just over 170,000 cubic meters a year. So on an average year, the cost of treating rainwater to the town of Olds is about $430,000. So that's the prize in an average year. Putting that into perspective, just doing a net present value calculation, putting inflation on the treatment costs 25-year out, without any mitigation of that I&I, you're going to spend, in today's dollar terms, $9.2 million to treat that I&I. If you can reduce that even by 25%, you're still going to pay $6.9 million. Turns out kind of by coincidence, for every $2.5 million you spend, or for every 25%, sorry, that you reduce I&I, you're going to lower the net present value cost by about $2.5 million. So how much money you have to invest in this, and how much you can actually reduce the I&I, that's something I can't answer, obviously. But so what's SRD's role in the town of Olds overall? So this is going to be just some quick stats coming off of your 2021 financial statements. Water and wastewater treatment costs for the town were about $7 million last year, 27% give or take of all of Olds' entire budget. That's a little higher than what I see in the other members. It's not outrageously high, but it's on the high end. It's the second highest cost component for Olds after recreation. Drilling down to, in your financial statements, water treatment and disposal costs only at $3.8 million. That's about 15% of your total operating costs, so still fairly high. And SRD is just over $3 million in that, so SRD's bill alone is 12% of your annual operating cost. In 2021, that is high compared to what I've seen in other municipalities. And about 80% of your total wastewater costs are going to the commission. So breaking that down to an average homeowner, using your utility rates and an average 20 cubic meters per month, your utility bill just for water is about $183, and SRD accounts for 26% of that. So we're not the big driver of all of your costs, but we're definitely present and play a role in what the town's operating costs are going forward. So that's kind of what SRD is about, what we provide and what our costs impact onto the town. We'll briefly jump into the flooding events that happen in June or July. I'm assuming everybody in the room is well aware of those events on the 14th and 24th of June and July 5th. And this is a chart that I shared with the administration when we first met, I don't know, back in early July, mid-July. Because to me it was surprising. Again, 2020, it rained heavily, but we didn't have anything like this. Olds has never had a flood of any type. So it caught us all off guard. We actually thought Olds didn't have a big I&I problem compared to some other members who skated through June and July with no issues whatsoever. So plotting the rainfall to what actually was delivered, the red in these charts is the rainfall, and the blue is the cubic meters per day that the station pumped. In reality, we put 70,000 cubic meters on the ground in each event. So the numbers actually, these charts go well off above where these spikes are. So there's probably a 5 to 6 times multiplier of what we typically get in a given month. So pretty clear to us that rain was the driving force here. Taking that same kind of chart and going down to what our lift station actually performed at, this is the liters per day during the flooding events. And the red line at the bottom, I want to draw your attention to that. That's kind of the baseline, if you will, of what the station was receiving in normal conditions in May. And then each time it rains, you can see those little spikes. And the highest point is capped because the station can only handle so much capacity. But the geeky engineers like myself, we call it hyperbolic decline. So it starts to fall off, and it takes forever for the thing to return back to normal. So even though you had the rain events in June, the water through the lift station didn't return back to that level till kind of last week, a couple weeks ago. So the area under the curve, if you will, so how much water was pushed through, is very significant. And it's indicative of likely a high water table or saturation within your community that's slowly draining into the sanitary system. And I've seen this in the other communities, but I have not seen this in Olds. So you were well over 50% above the 5-year averages for June and July. It's again driven by rain. And the town of Olds will be about 26% over budget for what SRD's budget for your wastewater production will be, and roughly $800,000 of costs to treat that water. So how did the Olds lift station perform? This was obviously a great question from your town admin, is, did something go wrong? So this chart kind of summarizes what was happening on those flood events. Your typical average daily liters per second is about 40, give or take, is what the station usually handles. It's designed for 190. In these 3 events, the peak throughput that we reached was about 167 liters per second. After each flood, it got slightly better, and that's because the line was getting more and more flushed all the way down, so the pressures start to drop as we move all the stuff that gets into the line. The non-disposable baby wipes are a giant issue in the wastewater business, so anything you can do to get those out of your municipal system would be appreciated. I'm sure you guys have problems in the town as well. So the station performed pretty close to its design capacity. There was one of the 3 duty pumps that could not operate at its 100% in auto mode, kept tripping out on a high temperature on the motor. So Mike eventually flipped it into manual and just kept tweaking it until it would stay running. And we discovered that there was one sensor that we knew had a problem earlier that we thought we'd repaired, clearly was still in fault, and the pump could not reach that 100%. So with that said, we averaged around 87% of design capacity. That's not too bad. That theoretical capacity means brand new, clean pipe, perfect pumps, brand new. You're likely going to see decline from that theoretical throughput over time, and the system's getting to be 9-10 years old at this point. So I can confidently say, based on the size of the lake next door, that even if all the pumps were running and we had 2 more, we probably still would have had overflow issues just with the rate of water that was coming at us. So here's a picture of I don't know what we call this, Lake SRD for now. The picture on the left, the little picture, was an aerial shot taken by the local farmer, Travis Miller is his name. And you can see just from the thermal shot, it was roughly 11 acres of crop damage that was flooded, so you can see the lake there. The total flood response costs that the commission incurred, so this is not the treating of the water, but the total costs are around $120,000. About 75% of that is related to vac truck hauling. So at the request of Alberta Environment, as part of the code of practice to operate for SRD, they asked us to pick up whatever we could and get it somewhere other than Old Creek. So it wasn't something that we necessarily wanted to do. It was, you're going to do this, and that's what the cost related to. Crop damages as well are in there. So here's what it looked like in July 12th. A little picture. The lake was becoming a little less, maybe a little bird pond of some kind. There are flowers in the middle. And just September 20th, when I was last up there, you can see clearly the crops are gone. The land is dried out. I'm in negotiations on crop damages right now. Our insurance company just told me Friday it's not going to be an insurable event. So that'll be another cost that's coming down. They decided not to cover that at this point. So these are the kind of things we want to avoid, especially because this particular area, as I understand, is an approved area structure plan for municipal development. And we don't want to ever see this happen, especially with houses or any other residential services nearby. I'm not sure what happened to my slide on the ponds, but as a commission level, we will be applying for Water for Life grants to build a emergency storage pond in Olds. We're currently looking at 3 possible options. I'm not going to talk about in today's session where those are going to be and what those costs are going to be, but there are 3 options available. 2 at least are going to require land acquisition, so we'll keep that in hand, I guess, until we get a better handle of that. I think I might have a slide out of shape here, but anyway, so we'll move on to some of the long-term challenges and strategic planning outcomes of the commission itself. The fees for services, I hear from every member, are high. Some members think it's reasonable value for what they pay. Others want to see it go down. And because of the installed capital of the system and the cost structure itself mostly being weighted to the city of Red Deer, there's really not a lot we can do other than keeping the thing running and keeping maintenance costs under control as best we can. That's about all we can do. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to be changing how we fund the reserve models in 2023's budget. And then finally, we'll talk about what you as elected officials can do to elevate the commission's profile to senior governments to try and attract eventually more senior government support in funding the capital renewal component of a system this big. So this chart is what's been happening to the costs over time. I started in, June of 2018. It's gone up every year. So even a 2 or 3% inflation on $2 is a nickel a year. So it's kind of the way it goes. About 65% of the operating costs are truly variable. It's charged on a dollar per cubic meter basis from the city of Red Deer. It's 65% of our costs. Non-negotiable, they set it every year. It is what it is. We have to pay it. We, in our rate model, pass that cost along with our operating administrative costs and reserve components on to our members. So 90% of the costs come from the City of Red Deer treatment, as I mentioned. Odor management chemicals are 14-15%, so that's the bioxide that we need to inject everywhere to keep the sour gas smell from emitting from all of the lift stations. Contract operations, this includes Dawn as the central ops leader plus all of the town operators, is about 6%, so it's pretty lean. Electrical and utilities, I hedged up all the electrical costs for 5 years, 2 years ago, so we're paying about 5.2 cents a kilowatt hour, which is well below market today, so not a huge cost driver for us. And then administration is about 2%. I have not completed the full budget run for 2023 at this point, but 2 of those items have big increases likely to come. The City of Red Deer treatment cost is one of them, and odor management chemicals, we've already been told, could go up as much as 30%. I had them on a 3-year contract, and they've been losing money for 2 years, and now it's time for the tables to turn, I think, to some degree. So anticipating fees around 265, 270 level. The way the commission's rate bylaw is structured, the reserve components are part of the cost recovery basis that goes into the calculations. But in reality, those reserves are only funded with hard cash if the commission produces the financial results as budgeted. So we need to have the right amount of water come in. We need to have our cost be the right number. In other words, the rate model requires budgeting to perfection, which we know never happens. So about 60% of the time, there actually isn't enough cash that comes into the commission to fully fund the reserves. So that's been recognized as a problem for the long-term sustainability of the commission. So we're going to split it in 2023 to be one component just purely on the cost recovery basis, and then riders, what I'm calling it, to calculate what rate we need from members to guarantee that we recover that amount of capital required for reserves. So the reserve number turns out to be about 25 cents per cubic meter. So the 2 components are rate for service will be 240, 245 plus that 25 cents for the reserve component. Excuse me. So lastly, the board recognizes that there's a need to improve the relationship between not only all the members, but also the City of Red Deer and the province as well. So as I mentioned, the city accounts for 65% of our operating costs, and we have no visibility or even a voice at the table as to what happens at the city plant level that could impact our rate. So in the operating agreement signed back in 2009, I think it was, there was to be a joint operating committee where each of the 3 Central Alberta Regional Commissions would have representation at the board, we'll call it the board level or governance level at the plant, to have some say in what's going on maintenance and capital-wise at the plant. So we're gonna be pushing for that. The commission had tried under previous, what's the right word? I'll use regime because I can't come up with another one. But the mayor has changed, administration has changed. Initial discussions have actually, they've been quite open to involving the commission in improving the relationships between the parties. The second line there is actively engage federal and provincial elected officials as well, to let them know about the challenges for a relatively small rural population base. The commission serves roughly 35,000 people, trying to support not only your towns, but another $200 million worth of critical public infrastructure. This thing has to work. Not only does SRD have to work, but your municipal collection systems also have to work, or you're going to have a lot of problems with wastewater. So in the long term, the board is going to be, for lack of a better word, lobbying senior government officials to be aware of the financial challenges that are coming to commissions like SRD and start to look at different avenues that they can perhaps use for supporting future financial sustainability of these things. So maybe they kick in some cash, interest-free loans, whatever the model might become, to help pay off the capital replacement burden just for the commission. So we recover about $800,000 a year in reserves, but the amortized or financial amortization cost every year is about $3 million, and that excludes fixing the Waskesiu system, which is nearing end of life. Or not quite, but coming. So significant cost coming down the road. That's one thing that the elected folks, as they look around the room, anytime you get a chance, say something about SRD and other public utility commissions are going to need some help. The last item that the strategic plan is going to look at is ways to either lower costs or generate revenue. The two commissions I run are solid waste and wastewater, and those are the two most difficult businesses, if you will, to make any money off of. It's really difficult to find any revenue generating sources, but we will be looking at implementation of sustainable technology where grant funding is available, so things like waste heat recovery, possible use for wastewater that's partially treated for use in oil field fracking, things like that are being done in some other jurisdictions, but it's a challenge to make any money off of waste in any form. So I think that's about it. Probably went on longer than I should have, but hopefully I gave everybody a good overview of what we are and some of the challenges, and be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weatherwick. We appreciate your presentation, very thorough, and yeah, it was very, very good. So I'm going to open up the floor to any questions. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Weatherwick? Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, through the chair. I was just curious, when you spoke about after our shower takes 9 days to get all processed, etc. I know we were approached for some wastewater testing to be done to do with COVID.
Correct.
Do you know if that would have kind of delayed the responses on a good testing for COVID if everybody knew that?
I'm not a viral expert, so I'm not sure on that front, but early days when COVID was running and there was just even discussion level going on of wastewater testing, I did reach out to the research scientist at U of A who was heading up that program early and said,
That's
we're
right.
here, we're collecting all over central Alberta, we'll even do the samples for you. And they eventually came back and said it wasn't granular enough, wasn't collected enough to an area, so that they were going to eventually implement it maybe in 4 or 5 regions in Olds, for example, instead of just one spot.
Okay.
So we just didn't seem to hit the sweet spot for her likely limited research funds. But with that said, if that's something that's important to council to know, you can hire, the technology is now widespread, you can hire private contractors to do that for you.
Thank you very much. We opted out of that, just not certain how it was going to benefit us at the time. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Blatz, then Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and perhaps not a question, but a comment that I'll run through Michael and perhaps to our administration as well. A year or two ago, or maybe 3 years ago, we did a media education session on what not to flush. Perhaps maybe it is time to do another reach out and education section on what we should not be flushing through our system. I know it wouldn't exactly have mitigated anything that happened earlier this year, but I still think people need to be aware of what does happen when they flush certain objects down the toilet.
And just a quick comment on that. I'm not sure what your current website says, but in the past, Olds did have some limited information. The commission, we kind of looked at all of our members, as well as some other jurisdictions to see what they were sharing, and there is some, what not to flush information on the commission's website. I did have some YouTube videos up there that, gathered the kids around and watched the baby wipes being pulled from wet wells and pumps. It's nasty. It's like the size of dump trucks. And what those things do is in the pumps, they don't actually get trashed up. They start to wind up and they make a rope. And once you start pulling them, they go for kilometers. We get them all the time in the lift stations. Every 2-3 times a year, we've got to go clean these things out, and they end up in the landfill. But generally, this system is oversized, or throughput velocities are fairly low, so the line does have a tendency to pick up scaling or solids material just because there's not enough water going through it. And it was designed in 2008 kind of time frame. So economy's booming, all the towns are growing 7-8%. Build giant infrastructure, then build it, and the water doesn't come. And the higher the costs go, obviously supply and demand kicks in. People don't use as much water when it starts costing them $200 a month instead of 20. So all of those factors drive towards more stuff in the line that causes more maintenance.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. My question is in regards to your aging infrastructure and your depreciation that's going on. You mentioned that you collect approximately $800,000 every year for this recovery fund. In light that it may actually be $3 million plus per year that you're looking at depreciation. Do you have a contingency plan in place there? What can municipalities be doing to help offset that? This is a very valuable infrastructure to all of us, of course. Just wondering, is there plan measures ahead that we should be looking at as a municipality?
I'll address the $3 million number. That's the worst case scenario, we'll call it. That's the annual financial depreciation, but it doesn't really slot into when you need the money. Most of it is at the tail end, 67 years from now. So that doesn't mean that you need to collect it all today. The commission does have, I wouldn't say a rigorous asset management model. We do have a preliminary version that kind of talks about, at what kind of timing, say things like lift stations need to be repaired. Pumps are the heart of the system, obviously. So the pumps need to be repaired, in this case, probably faster than their original design life because the previous maintenance cycle was somewhat non-existent, frankly. So we're going to be doing some of that work in 2023. Harvey doesn't even know this yet, but in the budget, we're going to be putting in a capital expenditure to do some capital assessment work. And it's going to start right here in Olds. So let's see where the pumps physically are, take them apart, do drawdown tests, all those types of things that you need to do to actually assess the capital. So it'd be analogous to, say, running around town measuring what your road conditions are. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to find how many potholes we have and figure out which one's the worst one. Stagger that into our 10-year and 20-year capital plan. So that 800 number currently is based on a 10-year capital replacement forecast that incorporates some of those major big-ticket items, as well as identified capital projects on the Waskesiu system. So the answer to the aging Waskesiu system is the two flanges in Waskesiu 2, which is at the traffic circle in Springbrook. The regional system comes up, and the Waskesiu system, they're literally this far apart. And it's designed to change out the pumps in the Waskesiu system, put a spool in, ship it that way so that you don't have to rely on 60-year-old pipe. So that's kind of already pre-built into the engineering. So financial contingencies are always a challenge, though, because the commission's only option is to either use debt or increase rates.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thanks, Michael, for the presentation. I have several questions, all supplemental in nature, but I'll start with one. What's the reserve balance for the commission currently?
Be approximately $4.5 million, plus another $600,000 of working capital.
Okay.
So compared to our asset base, it's not too bad given where we are in life. If it makes you feel better, that's as far as reserves to capital installed value. Benchmarking, we're probably better than most towns, and we're definitely better than the other two commissions that are in the central area.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. One of your slides there that interested me was the 25-year potential prize in MPV. Just wondering, does the emergency storage pond help address and deliver some of those savings for the town of Olds, or what more does the town of Olds, I'm still not sure what more the town of Olds can do and at what cost to help drive some of that 25 million or 25-year MPV prize?
It depends on the design of the pond. So two of the options are going to be what we're calling two-way trips. So they're close proximity to the lift station. There's a poly liner in the pond so that there's no leachate or leaking or anything, and whatever water goes to that pond eventually comes back to the lift station and gets pumped. That's what we're designing and building in Innisfail, probably in spring of 2023. The other alternative is a one-way trip. So let's take, for example, the old sewage lagoons of Olds, which are, what, 5 clicks away? Something in that ballpark. That was the original design, was to replace the aged force main that came from the old plant site out to the old lagoon site. That's going to be $6 million maybe. That's a one-way trip. So if we have an issue like we had in June, the emergency pump is going to come on and it's going to pump it out there and it's never coming home. That would lower the $800,000 exposure that you got pumping rainwater this year. As far as using that long-term as a treatment option, that would be something that would have to be discussed at the commission, I guess, as far as the member services agreements, but also Alberta Environment might not love that right off the gate. I'd never say never, but you know, there's $200 million of capital installed, and they probably expect it to be used. So, anyways, that's that one.
Okay, any other questions? I guess I do have a question, and that is for future. Would you be looking at doing any kind of expansion and having other communities join this particular?
That's one of the issues that was identified probably 10 years ago, was, and there is provision for adding new members within the bylaws of the commission. The closest one was actually the town of Sundre. And I'm watching them quite closely because I'm sure many of you are aware that they've got their, I wouldn't call it experimental, but non-conventional, I'll call it, wastewater treatment system that's going in, heavily grant funded. And that turned out to be about $11 million capital cost. The cost to build to SRD and build the lift station was $38 million. So it very quickly became a non-option for them. The other problem with expanding much outside of the communities we already have is Alberta Environment frowns upon shipping water from one watershed to another. So even Didsbury, Carstairs, things that are south of the Red Deer River watershed, it doesn't mean they won't do it, it's just they're trying not to screw up the rivers, basically. So it's unlikely at this point. There's nobody really large enough. The one comes up every time we have a meeting is the, or a strat meeting, sorry, is the Bowden Penitentiary, which was supposed to be on at one time, and it's the equivalent of 1,300 people on a daily basis. It would produce twice the wastewater of the town of Olds. And there's even flanges built there to tie the thing in, but it's a $11 million touch to tie in, because it needs lift station for the penitentiary. So other than that, there's not a lot on the horizon.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Wilson?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Just another question, like the 2 or 3 other communities along the line, and you mentioned Odin or Bowden, Innisfail, Penhold, and so on. Did they experience issues during these catastrophic rainfall events?
In this event, they did not. Innisfail has had 1 major flood and 2 near floods. They came, I was looking at the manhole this far, back in July of 2020 from flooding. So Innisfail has an issue, but it manifests differently. When it rains in Innisfail, we see the volumes, the alarms go off in 15 minutes. Like it's like now, bang, it's there. Where in Olds, it took a while. It took like 6-7 hours for that impact. So the answer is yes. The analysis that I did for you here, just very back of the envelope kind of number of what your I&I rates are and what the costs are, I've done for every community. The worst 2 are Bowden, followed by Springbrook. The best one is Penhold and Red Deer County, as far as minimizing their I&I, like that percentage over top of the dry quarters. Those are the 2 bookends. And I&I is it's a difficult thing to get on the agenda because it's underground, you don't see it. As long as the water's going away, everybody's happy. But if anything, I guess just trying to convey that it is important to keep your critical public infrastructure in top notch, not only our side, but the collection side at the same time. And there is real, tangible, significant economic benefits to funding it.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? I don't see anything. Can I get a motion on the floor to accept this information then? Thank you, Mayor
Go
Dahl.
like this now.
Thank you. I move to accept the information as presented by the South Red Deer Regional Wastewater Commission delegation as presented.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or concerns with regards to that? Seeing none, can I I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to, thank you very much, Mr. Weatherwick, for attending today and providing that information. It's very good. Thank you. We'll move on now to operations, capital projects update, and CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Director Grieco's with us, and he's going to lead this report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and Council. So just to start off with our capital projects, we need to go back one slide, sorry. No, that's okay. Thanks, Marcy. So with respect to our three major CIP projects, our 57th Avenue Lane development, that project is beginning. You'll see fencing around the area. We'll be getting going on that. We're expecting to complete that project somewhere in the realm of mid-October. Again, weather dependent. Most all of our CIP projects are weather dependent. 52nd Street is rolling along very nicely. The underground is complete. The majority of the curb and gutter is complete, and we'll be starting asphalt paving towards the end of September. Again, the project's hopefully going to be completed by early October. With respect to 50th Avenue Mill and Overlay, we are looking at some of the areas on that project that have and require some deeper repair. We'll be doing some compaction, and asphalt will begin on that project as well. Moving over to the hot topic, after listening to Michael's presentation, our sanitary relining program. That program, although costs were a lot higher than they were last year, we were still able to complete 1,400 meters of sanitary relining. Again, just more for information, projects like sanitary relining are, they extend the life, roughly 10 years, but the important thing is that projects for CIP, like we're doing on 52nd, those add longevity to our system, critical to replace that infrastructure as part of our long-term strategy to reduce some of the infiltration. We are currently working on an inflow and infiltration report, which is also going to include our water loss results. So the last report that may have been presented to council, I'm assuming, was back in 2017. There was a water loss and wastewater study completed. Through that report had a number of recommendations in the report, and I would say the town has made some improvements to that system. So what operations is going to be doing is looking back at that report, assessing what repairs and recommendations we completed and what we haven't completed, and bringing that report forward for council's review. In terms of manhole repairs, we completed 11 manhole repairs. That's quite a few more than we've done in recent years. And again, with sanitary relining and manhole repairs, we're already starting our plans for next year. Next. In terms of our asphalt patching jobs that we're not using our IR paver, these are more of bigger jobs that we're taking care of. 50th Ave in front of Boys and Girls Club, that's a big priority for us. A lot of those jobs are expected to be completed by fall, should the weather continue to cooperate. Sidewalk repairs, last PNP, I had updated that there were a number of areas throughout the community. We're happy to report out 16 repairs have been completed. We've done 9 utility dig repairs, and we've completed a total of 31 on the list. The areas that won't be completed will be deferred to next year and be on a higher priority for next year's list. In terms of the catch basin repair, we completed 24 of those, and again, we're starting to plan repairs for our 2023 program. Moving over to the Toboggan Hill, last month I had reported out that the Toboggan Hill, for the most part, is complete. We are going to be planting some trees on the side of the hill. Small project, not where the sliders are going to be, but they'll be on the side of the hill where we don't necessarily want riders on the side slopes of the Toboggan Hill. For the outdoor skating rink, you'll see the fencing set up. This project's slated to be completed in November, and we should be removing topsoil within the coming week. Last PNP, I had discussed our IR paver has been out working, very, very busy. We're happy to report we've completed a total of 33 jobs with the paver. I've attached some pictures. Again, we've been tracking the time that we've been using the IR paver, depending on the size of the job. Some jobs, if it's a small patch job, can be maybe a couple of hours. Some of the pictures include larger paving jobs where it could take up to 8 hours. Like right now, we're looking at 58th and 57th. You'll see a sizable repair. The unit is only so big, so those bigger patch jobs obviously take a lot more time to complete. The nice part about the paver, again, is that rather than utilizing cold mix, we're going to see some longevity with the use of that machine. This is just a tally of the different locations that we've had the unit. We'll continue to track the repairs all over the community. At the end of the paving season, we can still use a machine in the early fall and when it is colder. We'll utilize that machine a little bit differently. We'll put the asphalt in cubes, and then we can essentially use it in the colder months. In terms of our water meter pilot project, we do have the data out for the accounts, and they've been submitted to the vendor. Again, we're expecting arrival of the water meters in mid-October. With the library civic identifier and wayfinding project, these are still work in progress. We are still waiting on some feedback from Alberta Transportation with respect to those. With wayfinding, we are going to be updating our GIS system, so all wayfinding signs are indicated within our GIS system, so the public can actually find those wayfinding signs in our system as well. 57th Ave north of the hospital. So we're going to be doing some patch repairs to that project up there. We're still waiting on a quotes and availability of the contractors. Parks and Recreation, again, we continue to have vandalism be a problem at specifically in Centennial and Rotary washrooms. We had adjusted the timing in the washrooms. We moved it from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. We typically have those washrooms open over the Thanksgiving weekend. We are going to be closing those washrooms as a result of the vandalism. Tree planting, projects for tree planting continue around the community, specifically around 65th and Uptown. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be gearing up for winter, including the removal of our flower pots and hanging baskets. The other project that we have is we'll be starting this week, starting the installation of the new playground and equipment at the Kiwanis John Statham Park. And I will open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Director Greco. Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Director Greco. First of all, it's going to be very disappointing that we're going to have to close those bathrooms because we've had a number of citizens who've requested that we keep bathrooms open potentially year-round if possible. So will we be doing significant amount of advertising and social media to make our citizens aware that we are going to be closing and the reason why we're closing so that people are, understanding the impact of the vandalism and how disappointing it is?
Yeah, we will certainly be putting it out on social media and other newspaper avenues. We have, in the last, I would say 2 weeks, we've had about 4 to 5 incidents, particularly in Rotary. So those have become very time consuming. And it's not only vandalism in some cases. Last year, we actually had a very bad case of graffiti particularly in the Rotary washroom. So,
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and thanks, Director Greco, for the report. Just a question to take you back a couple of slides. When you talked about the capital projects and the relining and so on, any comment either from yourself or from Director Linderman on the costs? Or do we know, are we significantly below budget, on budget?
with respect to all of the projects, we are on budget we won't be over budget, put it that way.
Okay.
The one thing I will comment on is with the sanitary relining, we have our budget, but it is a moving target as to how many meters we can do in a certain year. And certainly, again, I'll reemphasize that those costs were up quite a bit this year in comparison to last year. So we weren't able to quite accomplish as many meters as we would have without inflation.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through the chair, I would like to ask Director Greco, Toboggan Hill, will we be doing one more assessment prior to winter tobogganing? I noticed that there's two very large boulders on the bottom of the hill on the south side, and I'm not once somebody gets going on a toboggan, that might be a target.
Yeah, I don't believe we've completed the final CCC, the construction approval. There is some moderate cleanup to do, so we'll make sure an assessment is done.
Thank you. Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Question for Director Greco in regards to the IR paver. You have mentioned in your slide presentation 33 jobs have been completed. In respect to the time that the machine was down, do you feel that this was a fairly productive time of working with this machine, or do you feel it was down because of lack of experience and or materials or what have you?
We did have one issue. It wasn't down that long. The machine has been excellent in terms of providing a long-term solution to some of those. I would probably say our staffing levels have been, we haven't been up to have a fully staffed public works department for some time. So that's been more of a challenge than I would say the paver itself. It has been a good machine, and we haven't had a lot of downtime with it. The sensor that did go, we were quickly able to get it repaired.
Councillor Daly, you have a supplemental? Go ahead.
Yes, please. So to go along with that then, what is the process of selecting the priorities of the jobs and which gets done first and later on and so forth?
Definitely in terms of priorities, it's always the safety ones. The ones that are really bad and that might affect the safety of our roads. Those are always the ones that are bumped up in priority. I would say the lower priority ones are the ones that are, I would say, coming off of alleyways and whatnot. Those are the ones that tend to get pushed down the line a little bit. And the ones on the main thoroughfares and corridors, those are definite higher priority ones.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And the discussion, I'm not sure if it's for Director Greco or perhaps the CEO or Director Linderman, but I seem to recall in the last couple of weeks there was a discussion around that water and wastewater loss in the study and possibly an RFD coming to council to allocate some funds for further work. You've mentioned there's ongoing work looking, I guess, at that 2017 study and what's been done and what can be done further. I'm assuming then that that'll all kind of be rolled up as part of the budget discussions upcoming and allocating dollars if there needs to be as far as project work and review and so on?
Go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Yeah, basically for the I&I wastewater infiltration plus the water loss, that will come as a business case to council, probably as one in fact, as they're intricately tied.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Batts.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to Director Greco. Going back to our sidewalk repairs, and it says that you're working on a priority list. How do you determine what that priority list is? Is it based on a study we've done in the past, or as people, bring complaints forward or concerns forward, then we act on those as well? I mean, how exactly do we determine the priority list?
Again, we have a priority list that it's essentially contains priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 would always be safety related. The ones that we don't complete are usually deferred to the next year, and so they typically go to the top of the list. But again, I would say we're behind with respect to some of these repairs, and continually we always have a full list. The list is never complete, so it's consistently ongoing, and they are prioritized in terms of safety.
Thank you. Director Greco, with regards to that, I'm not sure you actually answered that question with regards to how you get the information. So just to expand a little bit on what Councillor Blatz was asking, I know that there was a study done a few years ago with regards to all the sidewalks. Somebody had come out and we hired, and they came out and walked all the sidewalks and they prioritized. But also, do you use that list, and do you get information from your own workers? Do you get calls in? So how do you create that priority list? I get the idea that you go from priority 1, 2, and 3, but how is that list created? And it's the same thing for the paver as well that Councillor Daly asked. How do you determine what is your priority?
Yeah, basically we would be utilizing what they call a sidewalk assessment. So we have a sidewalk assessment list. Consistently items get added to the list. Residents also call in, and we cover a lot of mileage throughout the city between our utilities crews, parks crews. We go out and assess those. So as they come in, we do assess them. We have a running tally list, and should additional ones need to be added, we go out and review those right away, especially if there's a concerned resident or a complaint comes up, and we do that whole sidewalk assessment, and that's where we take our completed list, and there's items on the list, items off the list, all through that assessment.
Great, thank you very much. That's really good information to know. Any other questions? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm just uncertain on your reply, or when you were talking about the IR paver. The IR paver, as we all know, is intended for year-round use. Are we planning to go that route dependent on whether it be extreme temperatures or obviously accessibility to the pavement, but is the thought that we will use that IR pavement or paver year-round?
If we're capable to use the unit year-round, so I would explain that by the asphalt plants are going to shut down in the winter. So we would plan on keeping a certain amount of what they call asphalt cubes, and we will go as long as we can with respect to our roads and maintenance. So weather permitting, not very good to be out there in 20 below with the IR paver, but we're going to go as long as we can accumulate these asphalt cubes and utilize that machine.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I do have one with regards to the wayfinding signage, and that is the one at the library. So the library we wouldn't really need anything from Alberta Transportation with regards to the library, do we?
Not with respect to that sign, no. The wayfinding signs that we're waiting on Alberta Transportation are on the corridor of 27. The wayfinding signage for the library, we're working with the vendor at getting that one complete. I just wanted to provide the update with Alberta Transportation.
Okay, thank you. That's what I had figured. I just wanted to know why there was a delay if it doesn't involve Alberta Transportation, and now that you've said that you're waiting on the vendor, then that's great. Thank you.
And again, just to clarify, our vendor that we're working with, they're the same vendor for the entire project, but the library is definite priority.
Yeah, I figured it would be. Okay, thank you. All right, so could I get a motion? Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I make the motion that we accept the update, or the operations update from Director Greico as presented, verbally and presentation.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried, and we'll move on. Thank you very much, Director Greico. We'll move on now to unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? I don't see any. And we'll move on to new business, 7A then, the 701C encroachment agreements. CEO Williams. Sorry, I'd already crossed that off my list. I was a little ahead of myself. Okay, so we go to 5A. So we don't, I passed over 5A. Bylaws and council procedural bylaw. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Our legislative clerk, Marcy McKinnon, will speak to this item.
Thank you. As you can see in your agenda package, I have worked with some of the staff as well as the LT, and we have done a bit of a review on those two bylaw procedures, one for council committees and council meetings, and one for the policy and priorities. Most of the stuff is housekeeping and formatting, just some moving and some changing around within the bylaw itself. As you can see, I do have a few questions throughout it, and I'm not sure which way you guys would like to go. Shall I go start at the front page by page? Yeah? Okay. Are you taking it? Are you sticking? Okay. Okay. Page, I wrote the page numbers down. On page 19, pretty much standard. I don't know if there, I'll ask, I guess, if there's any questions on that page or any comments for that page of 19. It's the front page of our procedural bylaw.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, legislative clerk, if you could just, we'll just go through each page and ask if there's any questions. If there's any questions, I'll direct them to you. Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to our legislative clerk, McKinnon. One thing that kind of bothered me when I was reading the whereas, that is herein it referred to as the MGA. A municipal council is authorized to do something by resolution or to do something without specifying. The word something, I just want to clarify why we would use that word if there would be a different word we could use. It bothered me, and maybe perhaps it's just my thoughts on it, but I wondered if there could be a different term used than something.
Okay. Noted. Any more?
Actually, before, Ms. McKinnon, if you could just explain maybe the process, maybe we should be doing, I know that there's going to be some changes. I know that Councillor Cummings had mentioned earlier that he had some changes. So maybe we should just do you want to do consensus on every page if that's good? Or do you want it, or are you clear? Or what kind of process would you like to go through?
Thank you. With Councillor Blatz's question, I guess, I think I would like to investigate that one and perhaps consider some wordsmithing and bring it back for your consideration for that one, if that's okay. But I think using your comments, if there's a point brought up by Councillor that's an actual change, let's maybe get a straw poll or a council consensus on the floor for that point, and that way we'll know we're all in agreement for it as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Ms. McKinnon, because that's a good way of proceeding. Councillor Cummings, you have a question?
Just a point here on page 19 as we continue. So it's not specific to page 19, but it is specific to the entire document here. So if we look at the bottom half of page 19, we start off with part 1, interpretation, 1, title, 2, purpose through definition as per most bylaws. The rest of the bylaw is not numbered that way at all. The headings are not numerically in order. They have no numbering system at all. So it seems like there's one layer of numbering missing in this bylaw. If you look at the second bylaw that we were presented, its numbering system is consistent throughout the document, but this one isn't. So I'm just wondering if we can see some corrections on that.
We can do that. Page 20, we've added in a few definitions. I'm sorry, I hope we were done on page 19. Page 20, we've added in a couple of definitions, and we've made a few modifications. Any questions on page 20?
Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, just some questions, like call to question. It's an incomplete definition because a call to question is a 2/3 vote to call the chair, but it's about whether you stop debate or not. It's not to make a motion or to complete the motion that was made previous to that call to motion. And that's, we base that on Robert's Rules of Order, and this happens a lot of times in a lot of committees and commissions. People call a question and you vote on whatever motion's on the floor, but that's not the intent of a call to question. So I'm just wondering if we can expand the definition on that so people understand it's a 2/3 vote, whether we continue debate or not. And if the vote is in favor of calling the vote, then it needs 2/3, and you you vote on the motion that's preceding that. So that's one of the governance questions. And the ex officio one, that's no longer part of the MGA. It was repealed. So section 154, section 2, that's been appealed. So the mayor is no longer ex officio of any committee of town council. They can be appointed by name only. They no longer have that, I guess, ability. So that's on 2 of those that I noticed. That's part of the MGA. No, it's part of the MGA. If you look at the 2022 January edition, it says repealed.
In regards to the call to the question, that is the intent of it. It means to ask those assembled immediately to immediately vote after a motion has been made or debated. And we were using it for, I guess, after a lengthy debate and maybe a couple of rounds around the table, if a councillor on the floor wished to call the question to have it voted on, that's what the call to question was to mean. So I have no problem changing it. Would you provide the wording that you wish to see, or provide it now for council consensus? What should you like to do? Because I can put it in there for when it comes back for council to agree on.
Well, that's a good question, and if that was the intent, that council made their own rules around the call of a question instead of adopting Robert's Rules of Order, which in the past we've had, so that would be an interesting discussion.
So would you provide the wording then, so I can put it forward, or what would you?
Yeah, I can, that's
Okay.
easy to do. I can send you the wording of that.
And then you guys can debate it further. Okay. Anything else on page 20? 21. Again, we're just definitions added, words we've used, phrases we've used.
Mayor Dahl?
Just housekeeping on point of privilege there where it says members of council on, it says ION instead.
Page 22. So the CAO and I are trying to help define what an urgent or an added item should be. And so we've added this definition, and this will be up to council to agree to or not agree to the definition and what it states regarding an urgent item. So at the beginning of the meeting for your call-outs, added items, this is what we're looking for, I guess. Is that where we're going with that? Okay.
D.L. Williams?
Yeah, thanks. I can expand on that. Basically, it's to provide clarification to council that to add an item to the agenda, if it's not mundane or procedural in nature, it's best if administration has some preparation time. The agenda does, the procedural bylaw does state that all items have to be to the CAO and legislative clerk, I believe, 4 to 5 days preceding the meeting?
5.
5. So this is just to qualify that test of urgency.
An example then of urgency matter would be if something came up, say, the Chamber Awards dinner, and it was in between the two councils, or that would be something that you could add because it's going to be coming up really quickly or something like that. Is that what you're thinking with
Well-
regards to urgency?
Sure, that could be one, but I would challenge you as why we didn't know about it in advance. If we have a rep already there and then we would know the event is coming up, I would think it would be more of an urgent matter like the flooding. And something had to come forward instantly for a decision to be made or direction to be given or something like that. Attending an event that we should have known about, I would challenge all of us to maybe do better to bring them forward then, because to me, that shouldn't be an added item. It just doesn't reflect well that we're not doing our jobs, maybe. I don't know what to say to that.
Fair enough, I was just an example. Go ahead, Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, and to the, through the chair, to the legislative clerk. I believe it's very important, as you've stated in this section, that it be supported with written background information so that the administration has, and all council as a whole, has the opportunity to make that decision at that meeting, if council so wish to approve it.
So that would be page 22. And page 23, this is new, and I haven't read if it's changed, maybe Councillor Walsh might know. There's still, I believe this is relatively new where the chair can just adjourn it. They don't have to call for a motion. So I've added that in there, so you can do that now. Moving on to page. sorry.
I'll just make a qualification. That's only in the case that the agenda has been completed. Then there is no need to vote on it. If it hasn't been completed and you want to adjourn, you need to vote on it. So that's just...
And I guess we can expand further. Please remember that our Municipal Government Act is way more in-depth than our procedural bylaw. And we'll explain further details like Councillor Walsh just pointed out. Page 23, I'm moving on to page 24.
Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Chair. So notice of regular meetings here goes on to section 1 as a rule, the regular council meetings, so on and so forth. So this is described later on in the book, or in the bylaw as well, under paragraph 3. Of the section called Order of Business Meetings Organization. I don't think at this stage we need to describe the times and places of the meetings when the organizational meeting chapter discusses that. In fact, instead, I'd rather have here simply say the time and date of all regular meetings. Regular council meetings shall be established by resolution at the annual organizational meeting. Pigeonholing us here just makes it more to the point where we have to go back and make corrections here and there rather than, and like I said, it's already discussed in another part of the bylaw.
Any comments from anybody else with regards to that? I think everybody's fine with that, so.
Okay.
If I can continue on this page. Paragraph 3, I'm a little, the way the wording is just is a little confusing to me. So the following day, if it's a Friday, that means Saturday. So I just have it changed to, it shall be rescheduled for the next working day. Working day, business day, I'm not picky one way or the other, but the way it's worded right now, if it's a Friday statutory holiday, the next day is Saturday. Just one word added to that one.
It is disclaimed there though, right? Unless otherwise set by council.
Unless otherwise authorized by resolution of council, which I would think is something we would do at the organizational meeting. Rather than, because I don't think we have very many surprise statutory holidays, except for this year, where we had a surprise statutory holiday come up. But the Alberta Day, you know what I'm saying, right? Also, in section 4, I know I'm picky on this particular chapter here, but here in paragraph 4 of this one here, we talk about the 24-hour notice to councillors, and then when it comes to giving notice to the public, it just says, and that notice is given to the public. One day, we don't define how that notice is to be given to the public, so I just like the continuation of the 24-hour notice to be given to the public as well, not just the members of council.
I would say that that's specific to the notice to the councillors as per the MGA, right? And when council calls a meeting within 24 hours, the public technically, we can't necessarily notify them. So I guess I would look for your wording on that, on what it is you want changed to bring forward to council. Because part of that was taken probably, I believe, right from the MGA. I'd have to double check it.
So what I have for wording here is, change maybe, that the same notice is given to the public, and we can say if possible. That's the same wording we use elsewhere.
I think you have to say if possible, because you're prescribing, again.
if possible.
Because.
Yeah, we use that in several spots and throughout the documents. I'm happy with that.
Yes, I'm good with that. Does anybody have any comment about that? No, I don't see anybody's hand up, so, your floor again, Councillor Cummings.
I'm all done with this page. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anybody else have anything on page 24? Okay, carry on, Ms. McKinn.
Page 25, this is under attendance, the red point, the third point, I guess it would be. This is brand new and is being proposed. We don't know if council will like this or not. It was just something, this one is due to COVID, and most municipalities, it's the voting one I was thinking of, when you're electronic. This one is when, I see most municipalities have changed this to kind of reflect this, and I guess I would just want to confirm with council that that's what they wish for when they're not at a meeting. And then we go down through the points of timelines. And then a little bit more on the urgent items. Going to page 26, if no questions. And we've done this, point number 3 there, we've done this a few times where through the meeting, not recent, I think one meeting just recently where we added something as a point of discussion from a discussion within the meeting, and so it just lays it out here if it's the will of the council. And then we go down into the order of business, and as you can see, we've changed it up and we've added a couple of things. And I think we're suggesting changing the quarterly financial position update to just financial, so Director Linderman can bring financial things underneath there.
Okay, we've got a couple of hands up, so Mayor Dahl and then to Councillor Cummings.
Thank you. I was reading over this new format. This would be standing items every council meeting, right? We're not going to be taking these off and adding them on depending on what items we have for the agenda so that it's consistent?
Correct.
Thank you. This makes more sense to me that we know it's always going to be there if we need to use the order.
Councillor Cummings?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to add an item between 12 and 13 if possible. It's rise and report with a notation whenever a council exits a closed session.
Council consensus?
Sorry, just,
Council consensus?
does everybody agree to that? I don't see a problem with that either, so we're good with that.
Okay. Yeah, as per the MGA, yeah. Page 27. I'm excited for this one to see how you guys want to sit. So we've made the suggestion, as you guys know how you're sitting now for council at the org meeting, they draw numbers and we started it, I am having a, where was it? Doesn't matter. Right? But our proposal is now, we have our chair, and then we'll have the CAO to the right and the deputy mayor to the left. Council will still be in these 6 chairs. So whoever's the deputy mayor would be sitting up there where Director Linderman is. If council agrees, or if they have a different suggestion. I presume we're still okay with the drawing of numbers at the beginning of the org meeting to start with, once you determine where you're sitting, or perhaps, well, not really, you're all still here, but yes. Yeah, yeah.
Any? So is there any, okay, I was going to say, is there any comments? Mayor Dahl?
The only comment I have is respective to, and the fact that it's good that the chairperson sits beside the CAO, who frequently may need to be asked a question. As far as the finance director, I would typically have done that. However, I know I have to go through the CEO anyway, so as long as the CEO is near the chair, that's fine, because it does happen. Can I go ahead with my next point on page 27?
Shh.
Are we still on page 27?
We're still on page 27.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Before we move on to a different point, let's finish up with seating, Councilor Leon.
We're talking about deputy mayors, but that's fine.
Okay, same thing, so did you have a problem with the mayor sitting on front here? Okay.
I'm just making an observation that then every 2 months, that seat to the right of the mayor would be changing, and we'd be moving seats out in this area then. Just,
That's being suggested, yes. Anybody else have a comment with that before we move on? I actually am not in agreement with it. I do like to have the director of finance at our meetings, and I think it's good for the director of finance to know what the operation of the whole is. And I'm going to push back a little bit on CEO Williams' idea. I think that is the only director that actually should always be at our meetings, to know every aspect of the operations as well as our CAO. But I could be overruled on that, and I appreciate having Director Lindeman at our meetings, and able to, in order to ask questions that perhaps CEO Williams will not know the answer to. Mayor Dahl.
I would just like to ask what spearheaded this change. Is there a reason that you would like to see this changed in that positioning? Where did that come from? Was it not working the way we currently do it?
I was, sorry, with our new CAO, the directors will only be coming if they have to present. So we'll mostly have, this part will be empty. And hopefully in the future, when council plans and does our renovation to council chambers, that administration and presenters will not be sitting in the midst of council, right? That's kind of the other goal, is try to keep council together on that side, unless see who has anything else to add.
We'll go to Councillor Blatz, Councillor Cummings, I believe you had a hand, and then Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and just a comment. When I initially read this structure, I liked it. I thought it was very good, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the Director of Finance or the Director of Operations can't be here. There would be available seats. And I like the fact that we would have our legislative clerk and our communications person in the gallery, because those are definitely two people who should know and be very aware of what is discussed during our council meetings. So I personally quite like this structure, and I think that it would be good going forward.
Councillor Cummings.
I agree with everything she said.
Kind of agreeing, but we can go back to a Cuff report way back, and he requested that no administration sit at the front of council, mainly for that perception things that they're running the town and not council. So, no, I just refer back to what Marcy has just said here. Once we've restructured council, we could do it the appropriate way, I think.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I'm fine with, if people want to change it, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we have Director Lindeman at our meetings. I just think it's very important to have Director of Finance, but we're gonna have conflict here with the CAO. Go ahead, CAO Williams.
Yeah, I just have to remind council that director attendance is at my discretion. And given the council meets weekly, it's a lot of time to commit, in my opinion, to council meetings. So at this time, directors will be called upon as needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Just thought I'd put my 2 cents worth in while I could. Mayor Dahl.
Are we ready to move on?
We are.
Would I be able, no, I'm going on to section 4.
Are we leaving it as we've presented with the deputy mayor at the front then? Okay, thank you. Okay, for sure.
Go ahead, Mayor Dahl.
Thank you to Marcy, our legislative clerk, on that point. On section 4, I just wanted to make a note that I would like to ask if deputy mayor appointment may be waived if councillor does not wish to hold position. I'll speak to that. It has been done in the past where there's been councillors that do not want to sit as a deputy mayor. If they so wish to make that their choice, it would not really impede or make any difference, as all council could still split the difference for that individual. For example, we had past councillors that had work schedules and they just did not want to be deputy mayor for the extra time and effort or for any reason, or some were very busy and away a lot. So I would ask council what you would, if you would be in favor of adding and further deputy mayor appointment may be waived if council does not wish to hold position. Thank you.
Cummings.
I agree in part there, Chair, that sure, if a councillor doesn't want to be the deputy mayor, that's great, but part 4 doesn't say every councillor must be a deputy mayor. It just says that the council will determine a schedule for deputy mayors. It doesn't actually say that every councillor shall be a deputy mayor. So adding a caveat to a non-existent rule might not be necessary here. This gives us the total flexibility that you're talking about, just as it's worded now, to have deputy mayor signed as council wishes. And council would be, yeah, I don't want to be deputy mayor, therefore please don't put me on the schedule. The council will then determine that. So I don't see a wording need change to have the desired effect that you're looking for.
Mayor Dahl.
Thank you for your explanation, Councillor Cummings. I was just pointing that out in the event as perhaps last year when everybody came on board for our first organizational meeting and nobody would have had a clue that they had that option.
Councillor Daly.
Again, just an observation, if we go with that generalized statement, then the assigned in 2-month terms may be a correction that we should make in here too, Because then if there's only 5 councillors that are going to do the deputy mayor duties, then of course 2 months doesn't relate anymore. So maybe there's some wordsmithing that needs to be done there, as directed by council or as directed by resolution or what have you.
Yes, or as directed at the organizational meeting. At that time, the councillor can opt out at that point, and the mayor would know whether or not there's 5 people who are going to be deputy mayor or 6. So, Mayor Dahl, go ahead.
Final comment. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'm well aware, and I believe my council is as well, that this has happened in a couple of our municipal councils. As a matter of fact, there was 2 that waived this term for deputy mayor. I just brought it up as a point of interest and thought that it should be open on the floor for information.
Okay, so I would suggest, Ms. McKinnon, that perhaps a little bit of wordsmithing could be done in that area, and taking out the 2 months and just saying to be determined at the organizational meeting, and we can leave it at that. All right, thank you. Any other questions with regards to page 27? Seeing none, okay, Ms. McKinnon, the floor is yours.
Well, hopefully we're good with 28. It's only 2 changes. Jane.
Councilor Cummings.
Thank you. I'd like to propose a slight change to meetings closed session, section 3, where we add a sub-paragraph before A that says a brief description of the topic will be discussed in closed session as per Department of Municipal Affairs guidance documents, or something along that line.
You'll provide your wording?
Yes, I can provide wording to go like that. And that would go A, then A would be B, C would be, so on and so on.
Yes, sounds good, because we've gone that route. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I was just going to state that that is something that council, we have been doing, and it's been working very well, and the public are able to understand what the item is.
Okay, any other comments? Councilor Cummings?
Thanks. Oops, forgot to turn my mic off. A quick clarification, if I can ask for one here on section 5. No bylaw or motion will be passed at a closed meeting. Absolutely right. This next part, though, describes what happens after a closed meeting, which is already discussed in the regular council and special council meetings. I don't know if we need to have that in there as well. Just a point of clarification as to why that would be in there. I don't know.
Because it just describes what happens in a closed session for anyone that picks up the bylaw to read it, and we're trying to make sure clarity is there for all to understand. But if you would like it removed, we sure can.
I think it's good for clarity and just to be transparent to the community. Okay, we can move on, I think, then to page 29.
And with this one, you'll see that we had the 10-minute recess changed to 5, and then we've added or at the chair's discretion, of course. And then there's one more down at the bottom, just housekeeping. Any questions on that page? And I think the rest of this one, nope, that's not true. Page 31, this is the piece I was thinking of when you're at home participating electronically. Is this something council wishes, or would they just prefer to have it shown as it is?
Councilor Cummings?
Sorry, could we go back to page 30? We skipped over that page.
Go ahead, Councilor Cummings.
Oh, sorry. Actually, that is, I started off with voting as my topic, so I thought it was page 30, but it's actually something on page 31 under voting.
Go ahead,
Can
Councilor
I go with
Cummings.
that one there?
Yep.
Sorry. Item 10 is contrary to the MGA, section 172, paragraph 2 and 3. A councillor does not necessarily need to or shall be removed from the chamber. Sorry, I do have an option for rewording. That simply that councillor shall comply with section 172 of the Act, rather than leave the chambers.
I would just suggest perhaps we say, we wordsmith it, but instead of saying council chambers, we say council desk, because they don't have to even leave the chambers, they just have to leave the desk, right? And again, for the clarity of citizens to understand, I think simplicity is easier, and I think we can just wordsmith it down, if that's acceptable.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure it was in compliance.
Okay, Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I guess the way that I read that is like council chambers is that red line right there. And so it's, you know, so, but yeah, you know what I mean? There's a boundary between the audience and the chamber. And so that's how I read that individual didn't have to leave the room. They could still be in the chamber, but yeah, if you want to make it more clear, that's fine too.
If I can just read.
So Cummings?
Just to clarify, the thing I envisioned is when a councillor has a pecuniary interest in a discussion, but still has to stand up and present an issue as a citizen. So which again brings them up to the table and the podium to talk. So the sign on the door is chambers, this is the entire room. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified, that you don't have to leave the room. You just have to leave your space here.
It makes it more clear.
Yes, I agree. I do think they need to leave the desk, but not necessarily, they don't have to leave the chamber. Is that what everybody else is thinking as well? Okay, I'm seeing lots of nods to yes, so if we can sort of wordsmith that, Ms. McKinnon, would be great. Okay, well, is that good, and we can move on to anything else on page 31? Okay, any other questions with the number 11 or 12? I actually do have a concern with the voting electronically. I do not believe we should be having all the votes in person and then person on electronic voting. I don't think that that's fair for the person who's on electronic voting. That's how I read it here, that the person who's casting their vote would be last to cast a vote. Am I reading this wrong?
31, point 11 and 12.
Yeah.
It says the person will only vote only after all the other council members present at the meeting have cast their votes. I think everybody has to cast their vote at the same time.
It's more for recording, so people are aware that that person that's participating electronically has cast an actual vote in the vote, and it's recorded. Because if people are listening to it and don't have access, they can't see a hand raised on a black screen, right? So if, like, when you guys were maybe at home and people were sitting there, when the chair, that's why we always encourage the mayor or the chair to say unanimously carried or 3 in favor, 4 against, because people didn't always have the option to see a virtual meeting. They sometimes could only hear it. That's kind of where we're going with this. Definitely can be changed. But it's just more so, virtually doesn't necessarily mean video all the time. Virtually could mean audio as well. Just keep that in the back of your brain when you're thinking about that, I think, is the way, that's the way I think we wrote this.
Okay, I think it needs to be wordsmithed a little bit because that's not how I read it. Go ahead, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm not familiar with how council procedure was with electronic meetings and so forth. No, but I'm thinking like during the COVID time, how were the votes counted? Did somebody count the hands that went up, the electronic hands that went up, or was it everybody had their cameras on and everybody voted that way?
If we couldn't see them, they would have to speak their vote, like when they didn't have a good connection. They would have to speak their vote. Otherwise, the mayor could see the 5 people or 6 people participating in the meeting and see their hands go up, and that's where he had been directed to say unanimous or 4-3 or 2-4 in favor or against on the vote.
We look like the Brady Bunch.
Much better looking, I'm sure, but I'm just thinking like even when your screen is closed, I'm just trying to think that the electronic hand would show up on your screen, I believe.
Yes, it
But,
does. yeah.
but again, citizens that aren't watching a virtual meeting have no way to see that little golden hand that comes up.
So that's where the announcement of for and against would come into play then.
Should come into play then, yes,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, I think you
Councilor
also.
Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You also stated a virtual meeting is not necessarily visual. So there's the audio component only, which adds a little bit of the complication.
I'm just going to point out that when you're on a Zoom call, you do have that option to put your hand up electronically. That would still come through. Although in this case, I think it would be good if we put in here somewhere along the line that the mayor should verbally announce the voting, 3-4, 3-4, 4 against, whatever it is, so that the people in the public will hear that because they may not have access to the video. So it's best to have that follow up, and I think we could wordsmith this a little bit to say that. Because right now, to me, it just is saying, you're stating your vote only after the council members have already voted, and to me, that's not right. So if that's workable for you, Ms. McKinnon, we can do that.
I
And then,
would seek more direction on what you want for point 11.
yeah, okay, so point 11 would be that the mayor should, or whoever's chairing the meeting, the chair of the meeting, should verbally announce the vote that's cast. So they should be saying the vote is passed in favor unanimously, or they should say the vote is passed in favor 6-1, or whatever way it is going to be. Councilor Blatz?
Well, I guess when I read this, I interpreted it totally different than you did, because when I read it, I felt that if the visual screen was available for the chairperson to see it, they would realize the hand went up or the little animated hand, either or. And then what I interpreted this was then they were just asking those who can't see it to say, how did you vote? Because if they're watching us, they're not seeing the person on Zoom. And that's how I interpreted what this paragraph meant, was those people, everybody can see our hands go up, but if I happen to be attending by Zoom, they can't see my hand. And particularly if it's a contentious item, then we should be stating, I did vote in favor or I did not vote, so that people know. Or I guess if you wish to have it, as you said, the chairperson does say 4-5 or however. I guess there's that too. But I know in the past I've had people who've commented to me on how I voted by watching these meetings. So some people have been in favor of some of the ways I voted and some people have not. So that gives the general public the option to know how we have voted. Because there has been requests by citizens, if you remember, that we have recorded votes at every meeting.
True that, and certainly this would be, doing the verbal thing afterwards would be straighten out what the vote was. Mayor Dahl and then Councillor Cummings.
You got a good eye. I can't see who it would harm or what it would harm by just adding a verbal closure to it of the vote. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So maybe a proposal for a rewording of this would be, when a vote is called, council members attending the meeting by means of electronic communication shall be asked to state their vote, period. And simply remove the rest of the statement. That'll leave it up to the chair to decide how and where and when and how, based on this particular situation that we're seeing ourselves in, the vote can be taken effectively and efficiently, because every situation in this case may be different as we move forward with this whole idea of electronic meeting, rather than pigeonholing ourselves in a specific wording.
Go ahead, Mayor Dahl. Thank you.
And lastly, the job or the duty of the chair would be simply clarity anyways. And if the chair didn't feel there was clarity, the chair can state clarity.
Very true. Okay. Thank you. Ms. McKinnon, you've got that sorted out then, for number 11?
Yeah, for number 11, for sure.
Okay, we'll move on to number 12. Does anybody have any comments with regards to 12 and the closed session? Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I am wondering why you would need to come up with a sworn declaration as a commissioner of oaths. I don't know about currently, but I know in past, almost every councillor was a commissioner of oaths, and you're going to swear before your peers that there's nobody there. I'm thinking, where's that lack of trust coming from?
Thank you, Councillor Walsh. I concur. Anything else? Anybody else have some kind of comment or question? Mayor Dahl?
I concur with Councillor Walsh that every member of council is Commissioner for oath. However, speaking, if we don't have a stamp dating us with stating when our term expires, we're not eligible to use our oath. Is that correct? Am I wrong?
Well, I think we're getting off topic though on that, but I think we need to address that at some other point. Anybody else have any comment? I just think that right now, where is the trust with regards to this number 12? I think that council should be, going into closed session and knowing that what your duties are is when you go into closed session, and I don't think we need to have this commissioner of oath or having an oath being sworn afterwards saying that you didn't have anybody else in the room. I just think that it's not needed. That's my opinion. Anybody else want to comment on that? Councillor Daly, I see.
Well, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would agree that this is kind of going over and above. I believe if there's an issue, it's addressed in other policies and probably MGA as well to deal with this. So,
Councillor Cummings.
My concern would be with an actual legal challenge to any sort of FOIP recognition here, that we'd have to have something saying that we've said that we are alone in this room. I don't agree with the Commissioner of the Oath things, but I would insist that there be something, even if it is a verbal statement on the record, written into the record, which we don't keep in closed session, right? So that will be challenging. But an affidavit on a piece of paper saying that we are, or we did participate ourselves, would be necessary just for keeping the legality of the FOIP closed session rules in place, I think.
Anybody else? Councillor Wilson.
Mayor Ryan, I'm not sure my comment will address Councillor Cummings' comment and question, but the minutes as well will indicate who attended the meeting and who exited and when they returned to meetings, right? So now whether there's also a burden of proof required in terms of, as I'm zooming from a remote location, that I'm the only one in the room and attest to that, I'm not sure if that's necessary or not.
All right, anybody else? Councillor Blatz, do you have a comment at all? So we can go around the room.
So I'm hearing we'll remove that?
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, so anything else on 31? '32 just was some housekeeping, unless anyone has any questions. Go ahead, James.
Thank you. Under delegations, paragraph 2, we both in this paragraph state that the delegation shall have a maximum of 15 minutes, and then we say they can have more time if they need it. I don't think we can have a maximum time limit and then say they can have more time. So I would rather us change that, just remove the word maximum, and that makes the sentence grammatically and logically correct.
Okay. Any comments? Mayor Dahl?
Just wondering if that's just clarification for the member that's speaking, that they have 15 minutes. Now, I understand that the chair, for example, today, our delegation, needed to explain questions that council had with regards to monetary funds. That added time to his delegation. So is this just stating, we're telling you you have 15 minutes for preparation, please? However, speaking council or the chair has the option to add that time if they're clarifying questions from council.
Councillor Blatz?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Well, when I read this, and I noted it as well, but the thing that I was thinking is how many times have we had a delegation that their presentation has been within our package and they have read it to us verbatim, and it has taken more than 15 minutes. So whether we just remove the word maximum of 15 minutes or say the delegations will have a presentation of 15 minutes. Today's was a little more unique situation because we didn't get the presentation till this morning. Not all of council had time to review the presentation from the SRD Wastewater Commission, so I think to allot him a little bit more time, and it was a request that he did come to our council meetings to make a presentation, I think then the rest of this I can deal with, and I believe that covers all bases during our meetings. But again, I want to remind everybody that we've had those presentations that have gone on for longer than 15 minutes when we have had the documentation presented to us in our agenda package.
Yes, concur. Councillor Cummings and Mayor Dahl.
I'd like to thank the mayor for agreeing with me in this case, because you're right, I said exactly what you said, that we give our delegations 15 minutes to speak, and then the chair is in charge of controlling that 15 minutes, whether it's granting them more time or stopping them at 15 minutes. But logically, you can't have a maximum time frame that can then be expanded upon. So it's just a matter of the logic flow of the statement doesn't work. A maximum of can be removed and the meaning doesn't change in any way whatsoever. We still give our delegations 15 minutes and the chair or whoever is presiding can control that time as they've always had and always will.
Thank you, Councillor Cummings. Mayor Dahl.
To conclude with the answer that I know is yes, I agree. The chair, the person sitting in the chair, is the one that has to be able to understand the situation as is. For today, I would hate to have to say to my councillors, no, sorry, we're going to cut this off at 15 minutes because you know what, we're only giving them 15 minutes. It is at the discretion of the chair to understand and seek to understand the proper timing.
It's absolutely, and to give guidance to whoever's making a presentation, not to go verbatim through their presentation unless absolutely necessary. All right, I think that's pretty clear. So if we can remove maximum of out of that, we should all be good with regards to that particular item. And we can move on to 33.
Just a point for consideration on page 33, if it is in the MGA under section 200, if you want to leave it in there, add it to the bylaw, we can, or we can leave it out because it is in the MGA. Just gives the council that option.
Is there any questions? Councillor Cummings?
Thank you. Under the heading Public Hearings, the first paragraph's a little confusing to me because it first starts off with a sentence list and then a bullet list afterwards of one item. I wonder if we can reword that into a complete bullet list. And a little bit of rewording on that one. I'd like it to see, council shall hold a public hearing when A, required by the Act, B, required by any other legislation or regulation, C, road closure bylaws, which kind of threw me for a loop there, and D, any other matter at the direction of council. You'll notice I removed the resolution word because resolution and direction of council are the same thing because we only can direct or do things by resolution. So having the same wording twice doesn't make sense.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
I can give you wording on that, Marcy, too.
Is everybody okay with that change suggested by Councillor Cummings? Consensus around the table? Everybody good? Okay, that sounds good. Is there any comment with regards to number 5, though, with regards to having people who are appearing before council claiming that they are doing it under oath? I don't. Sorry, Councillor Blattswood. You're fine with that? Is everybody good with that? Councillor Wilson? Okay. All right. Thank you. We'll move along to 34 then.
And again, just a couple of housekeeping at the top, and then we've added a severability clause and changed the bylaw to be removed, and of course, just the editing for the date.
Councillor Cummings?
It's my last one, honest. Under section, or under the public hearings point, or paragraph 4, I'm not too sure if this is needed in this space, as the public hearing's over, and the section on public hearing is what we're in, and describing what we do in another event, which is a council meeting, regular council meeting, special council meeting, or whatever we're attaching to that public hearing. If in the odd situation, we have a public hearing outside of a council meeting, these don't make any sense, because you just don't randomly make motions and stuff in public. You'd have to be in a meeting of some kind to make a resolution. And those points are all brought up under procedures for regular council meetings and special council meetings. So I guess the question is, can we have a public meeting that isn't attached to a council meeting or a regular council meeting? And if so, for instance, we expect to have a crap ton of people, we have it at another venue, we have that public hearing, the hearing is closed, and then we reconvene somewhere else at a different time, different place to have a council meeting? Or is a public hearing always attached to a council meeting?
I'm sure our legislative clerk or our CEO can definitely answer that, but I would like to say, just from experience, the public hearing that I'm reading here is always tied to a council meeting, because after the public hearing, the bylaw follows that for council to pass by resolution. So that's where it's tied together, why it has to be together.
Okay, great. So if that is the truth, again, I don't know, that's why I'm asking. I still don't see a reason for paragraph 4 in there, since it's covered under earlier points of the procedure bylaw where we have a council meeting, a regular council meeting, or a special council meeting that we do.
I can
resolutions
answer
at
this
point.
question for you. Again, clarity for the citizens under the topic of public heading. We're trying to, I guess, ensure that they understand the full process of what should happen during a public hearing. And, yeah.
Councillor Blatz? Well, that's what my comments were, just, I concur exactly with what our legislative clerk has said. This is just for clarity for our citizens and for our residents to read this and understand and follow the process, because if they're part of the public hearing, they need to know how the process works. So to me, I'm perfectly fine with leaving it in, just for clarity's sake. Yeah, I agreed. Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I think where the issues coming in is the wording in number 4. I think we need clarity in that statement where it's after the close of the public hearing, then the process of the council would be to, like, these are our options that we could rely on. I think right now, I see where Councillor Cummings coming from. If you read that, it says after the closing of the public hearing, right, we're all sitting around having a coffee, can we do these 4 things? No, we can't. It still has to be under the venue of the council. Right?
Yeah, agreed. So there's probably some little bit of wordsmithing at the beginning, saying after the close of the public hearing, the process of council is as follows. It may do this, may do that, may do that. Is that what you're thinking? Okay. Any comments with regards to that particular wording? No? Is everybody good with that then? Ms. McKibben, you're okay with that?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, super. All right. Then page 35 of, we're at the end of that.
Sorry, so, oh.
Councillor Cummings, you have something else?
Right, just one quick overall question, just on a clarity issue here, because I'm not too sure how this works. At the very beginning, when we so I'm just going back up to the beginning of the page real quick here. I'll find the top of the page there, where it's called, the bylaw is named. Not the number, the
this page?
Page 19, yeah. So it goes, title, this bylaw may be cited as the procedural bylaw. elsewhere in the document, it's called different things other than the procedural bylaw. So on that page that we were just at, the last page or second last page where the signature blocks are, it's called the Town of Olds Council. Yeah, so it has a different name there, and the header on every page has a different name for it as well. So I'm just wondering if we can go through that just clerically and make sure the title is actually the title identified in the document on page 19.
Just so it's consistent all the way through.
That's right, just consistency in the name of the title, because we do define the title on page 19. It's, the header's different and everything, plus that last page, it has a different title as well from everywhere else. So it's just a clerical issue. I find a little OCD problem with having it that way, so.
Okay. Proceed, Ms. McKinnon.
So the next one is page 39. It's the Council Policies and Priorities Committee bylaw, and it's mostly housekeeping. And page 40 changes the order and adds a couple of, or adds the CAO report. CAO, did you want action list as well, or just CAO report? Just CAO report. Okay, thanks. And that would be it for that one. And I guess going off of what we discussed in the last one, point 5 would have to be amended. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I see that. Thank you. Okay, so that wraps up the bylaw, going through all the bylaw. Holy cow. All right, so can I get a motion then, if everybody's clear? Council Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept for information the 2022-19 Council and Committee Procedural Bylaw and the 2022-20 Council Policies and Priorities Committee Bylaw as presented, and give direction to administration to bring back to a future regular council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. Is there any comments, questions, or concerns? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And those opposed, that motion is carried. Thank you. Does anyone need a break? 5 minutes? All right, we're taking a 5-minute break at 3:03. Recess back to be back at 3:08. Okay. All the meeting, sorry, go ahead. Okay, so we'll move on to new business number 7, page 42, 7A, 701C encroachment agreements, and then we've got 701P, 702P, 703P. Since the CEO is not here, and you're on the list there, Mr. Sloan, so welcome. It's all
Thank you.
yours. Yep.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the following policy and 3 procedures were reviewed at Leadership Committee last month. And Council Policy 701C pertains to encroachment agreements. The current, most recent one that is active is from 2012. And there was a draft done up in 2021 that, due to circumstances, is now here today. So this policy 701C for encroachment agreements, well, it looks like there is a lot of red text here. The content of the policy has not changed much. The edits made were mostly just to make the document more concise. And in short, the wording, again, is very similar to what it was before. The biggest change here is that in the standards, it was previously, there were separate sections for encroachment agreements or easement agreements on town parcels, streets, and easements, and now the standards has been revised since the wording in all 3 of those sections was pretty much identical. It's been revised to just fit under one standards section on, the new one starts on 45 and goes on to 46, and as you can see, it's now roughly 1 page, whereas before all of those sections were spread out separately. But again, the wording is similar. The policies then, regarding, I hope the first one is about encroachment agreements, because that ties in procedures, sorry. So procedure 701P, again, was amended and was, there were very minor changes from before. One of the main changes that was added here was just how appeals of encroachment non-approvals is brought to council. We had one recently, and through that practice, we're able to iron out some details to make it a smoother practice. So, sorry, I only brought paperwork for the policy, not for the procedures here. So should I just go back up to the recommendation at the, on 42? So I guess the council direction is to accept for information the administrative procedures 701P, 702P, 703P, and council policy 701C for information, and further request administration bring council policy 701C to a future regular council meeting for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sloan. So, probably be best if we deal with each one of these individually. If we have anything, we can present to Mr. Sloan for any changes or a possible conversation. Ms. McKinnon.
Just for a bit of information, so 701C, council policy, is the one that's being presented for council to accept, approve, and direct us to bring back to the next council meeting. 701P, 702P, and 703P are here for your information. Council approved 702C and 703C in 2021. I want to say January. So you guys probably, you were 2021 October. So you guys would have seen it, but the new council members might not have seen it.
All right, so we basically should just address 701C then. Okay. So let's start and go through it, and if anybody has any questions on each page, I'll just call it out and we'll see how it goes. So page 43, are there any changes? Nope. Oh, sorry, Council Daly.
And this is very out of character for me, but I think there's a spelling mistake on the first one. Policy statement, there's an E on the end of respond. Is that? That's the first time I've ever caught a spelling.
Thank you, thank you, Councilor Daly. That's, I got it circled too, so that's good. We'll move along then after that. Page 44. Page 44, anybody? Oh, good. Okay, page 45. Page 46. Page 47. And page 48. Page 49. Okay, that covers the policy. So basically what we could do would be to call a motion then, unless somebody has questions on any of the agreements further. Councilor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And just a question for Mr. Sloan. Can you help me connect the dots here and with these changes, and then particularly with the standards? I'm just wondering what the outcome is. Will this mean less activity perhaps coming through to the Municipal Planning Commission around the encroachments, variances, deviations, setbacks? Is there any connection there? Does this streamline that process and perhaps mean some less activity for MPC? Or am I totally off base?
Thank you. Through the chair, it shouldn't have any impact on the files that go to MPC because MPC actually does not have any authority over encroachment agreements. That is an authority that council has that has been delegated to administration. So the decisions made at MPC regarding development permits, MPC cannot direct administration to enter into an encroachment agreement or not, so it's a separate procedure.
All right, any other questions? All right, can I get a motion? Councilor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept for information the administrative procedures 701P, 702P, and 703P, and Council Policy 701 for information, and further request administration to bring Council Policy 701C to a future regular council meeting for consideration.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And opposed? And that motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sloan. We'll move on to 7B, which is Authorities, Boards, Committee, and Commissions of Council. CEO Williams.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I will speak to this one. So for council's consideration today, there are 4 committees in question. The first one, FCSS, the general recommendation, and I'll just read them and the recommendation, and then perhaps we can work backwards from there. This is done, of course, with the intent of evaluating our committee structure and recommending streamlining to that structure, not necessarily just for financial purposes, but to recognize the type of work being done by the committee versus that of administration and that of council. So FCSS, the administration's recommendation is that this committee, be dissolved. For the MPC, the recommendation is that it remains in place, but the public appointees be replaced with all of council becoming the MPC, and furthermore, that council direct administration to bring back recommended changes to our land use bylaw to streamline planning matters. For the Olds Police Advisory Committee, we recently had the chair of this committee resign, and the committee lacks a bylaw and an updated terms of reference. So it's a general question to council. What would you like to see happen to this committee? And the final one is the Public Art Advisory Committee. And the recommendation is that this committee be dissolved at the council level, but we retain the expertise currently on that committee and allow administration to operate in an ad hoc manner basically at our own discretion as issues arise. So obviously with that, we'll go back to FCSS and open the floor to questions, conversations.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Are there any questions with regards to the FCSS, that's Family and Community Support Services Board that was appointed, and we have members on council on that? Council Daly, do you have any comment?
No, just that I agree with the recommendation here, being the member that sits on this board, in that all the decisions that are made by this board here comes back to council for resolution. And so I feel that it was kind of a redundant for myself to be sitting on this board, so.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else have a comment with regards to that? No. Okay, we'll move on then to, as long as CEO Williams, are you satisfied with that comment? Okay. We'll move on then to the Municipal Planning Committee. Are there, there's several councillors sit on that right now, so maybe Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I just have a question or two. CEO referenced in his introduction that there would be a movement towards streamlining bylaws and so on. So for now, have we ruled out removing any participation by council and simply turning this over to administration for their review and action?
We haven't ruled it out. It just depends on timing. Before the organizational meeting, we probably won't have time to get amendments because LUB amendments require public advertisement. There'll still be a role for the MPC's work, but council doesn't have to have an MPC. It can take on some of that responsibility itself. With the key changes that administration is proposing, it's largely around two factors. What we call Class 2 home occupations, and then increasing the administration via the development officer's authority for variance requests into our numerical regulations. So right now, his variance powers are very limited, not to increase past 15%, which is still going to be 15%, just going to expand the scope of what he can vary, he or she can vary at any time. Right now, it's limited to certain zones and certain uses, residential fences, for instance. A fence in a direct control district, for instance, has to come to council, or MPC rather, for variance. So more moderate changes like that. Where council would still have that role would be any variance above 15% of the stated land use bylaw regulation. For larger decisions in direct control districts, all statutory amendments, and obviously any subdivisions as well would have to come to council for approval. So I guess that was a long-winded answer to your question. It's possible to change MPC to just be council authority. It just can't happen before October's organizational meeting.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and a true supplemental. Yeah, because at the elected officials course there a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, I attended the land use and development training session. I asked the question to the individuals that were moderating the course, what's happening in this area. And the response was, there is a trend towards turning over those decisions exclusively and solely to administration. Now, they also caution that with that, comes some obviously dangers or cautions when you vest all that power or authority, I should say, with administration. But they did acknowledge there is a trend happening towards vesting that total authority with with administration. The other thing they talked about, and you've echoed, is the tolerances and the boundaries, which I would certainly wholly support as a MPC member and from what I've been seeing. So kind of expanding that realm, that boundary, that framework under which the development officer and the planning group could work, and then leaving the truly exceptional items perhaps for council consideration or MPC down the line.
Thanks, Councilor Wilson. And I forgot one key thing that you just reminded me of. Within, say, a restructured MPC or the elimination of such, a key factor would be the expansion of appellate mechanisms to council for administration's decisions. Because this is not to give administration more authority per se. It really comes down to providing more efficient service, basically. And it's no one's intention to take authority from council, but council can delegate authority as it sees fit. And as you mentioned, it is a trend, and there is, in my opinion, reasonableness to it. So.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Yeah, my final comment is, I kind of look at this as well in the area of efficiency, and I believe you've referenced in the past the time it takes for the administration to prep for an MPC meeting, pull the information together. I'm looking at it from the delay or the timing perspective. You've got an individual, a resident or whatever wanting to do something, depending on when they submit their application and their documentation, could be well over 30 days before a decision gets turned around. And so at the end of the day, I'm all about the streamlining, removing the bureaucracy, and being quick, nimble, and agile as far as turning around decisions. So hopefully we'll work there. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Blatz.
Well, and just a reminder to all of us that the land use bylaw, administration will have to follow whatever council determines as our land use bylaw. So no matter what we delegate to them as authority or whatever else will be the decision of our land use bylaw. So that should also help expedite all processes.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you very much. I would agree that the town administration provides all the administrative support to the committee, as well as ensure the committee follows the legislations and regulations, as Councillor Blatz said. This will streamline, and again, red tape will save everybody a lot of time with the professionals that are qualified in that area to present.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments? Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I'm just curious to the composition because we do have councillors who are STBA, I think, that would not be able to sit on this, whether we need 7 members or whether it be a smaller group of council.
C.A. Williams.
Yeah, that is correct for now. It is contingent on a continued membership in Parkland Community Planning Services, which obviously is under discussion with the future of that organization. But as of right now, only 6 councillors are eligible. So.
Councillor Blatz.
So having said that, then we do have some members at large that would be, were appointed for a 2-year term. Will we be phasing those terms out from our public members, or how will we be dealing with that? Or just at our organizational meeting, we will end the term for all MPC members?
Yeah, the rollout of this is at council's discretion, but that would be an organizational meeting matter, whether to end the terms prematurely or phase them out over another year. So.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I would support this going forward, just on a number of reasons that we've heard here. The reduction of red tape, the expediency of permits, and I believe this all feeds into our overall plan of economic development and helping that out, and also attracting developers to this community as well with you know, the expediency and the level of service that we could offer them. So I would agree with this.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I'm just going to make a comment in the fact Councillor Wilson brought up the EOP course that we taught, that we took with regards to planning and development, and the facilitators did say that there was a movement towards this, but also they did say that their preferential was to have a mix of the MPC, public at large and council on there. And one of their comments that they made was, it takes the political aspect out of the hands of the politicians and creates an opportunity for people to go to MPC and hear from public at large, regular members of the community. So I think that that's kind of a thing that I would like to continue seeing it. But, you know, at the end of the day, we do want to make sure that we're cutting red tape. There has to be a way of maybe expediting things through the whole process of planning and development, and perhaps by doing the review of the land use bylaw and creating situation where that becomes a little bit more strict or limiting, then we can streamline things a little bit better with our planner that we would have. I'm not sure if that's possible or not, CEO Williams.
Yeah, I think the idea of continuous improvement is always there. Certainly with the town of Olds, we've been a bit in flux probably since 2019 or 2020 when we lost our planner, didn't replace it, and now with Parkland going through its changes. But with regards to the MPC, that certainly is the number one reason for keeping it, is public participation and that perception of keeping the politicalization, I guess is the correct word, away from council. The corollary to that is putting it on administration, more or less, and giving, through the land use bylaw, clear direction to administration to follow these sets of rules, these parameters. If people disagree with our interpretation of it, that's where council comes in as the appellate mechanism. It's never a surefire way to guard against prejudices, accusations, etc., but it's the best that we can offer outside of having the public involved in it, which is not a bad thing whatsoever. It's just not the most efficient thing. So council has to weigh those two options.
Thank you. I do have one other question, unless anybody else has one. No? The cost involved in doing this with all council, would that be eliminated because we would have it as part of our council meeting, or what's your thoughts with regards to that?
Making the assumption that the land use bylaw changes can happen, let's call it in November, with proper advertisement in place. The amount of work forward to the MPC or whatever that mechanism council establishes for planning, it would be held during the same days as either council or PNP. I believe I had to get clarification on the PNP side, but I'm pretty sure as the planning authority, you can set your meeting dates with proper notification as per the MGA's committee or notification timelines. So in theory, we would eliminate all additional per diems that currently exist for MPC.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is the public art. Is it the public art? Or, no, sorry, Policing Advisory Committee. Is there any questions with regards to this one, and how would people like to see this one handled? Comments? Mayor Dahl?
I've read this several times, and as an alternate, I attended one through the year. I could agree with this rationale that the administration provides administration support to the committee as well as ensures the committee follows town policy and bylaws as necessary. I like the idea of the cost savings, no expense claims for elected officials for attending said meetings. Committee meals are extra costs for overtime and board meetings and town facilitators. There's so much more to it. Although the background and history would be how does council want to continue maintaining its function? I never did hear, so I would like to know.
Right, CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Yeah, and to follow up on Mayor Dahl's comments, I guess to start with the basic question, all committees of council require a bylaw. We don't have a bylaw. Does council wish direct administration to draft a bylaw or not? And that, I guess the question that's not being asked is this committee worthwhile for council to continue with and with administrative effort? So, and once that question's answered, obviously the next one's coming.
Thank you. Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you, I guess, to CEO Williams. Have we had further discussion with both our municipal enforcement and our RCMP detachment as to what direction they would like to see us go into with this? Because I think the original intent was to be a sort of a liaison or a line of communication with our residents and our municipal enforcement and the RCMP. And I know in passing, one of the conversations we had in the past with Staff Sergeant Wright was, I mean, they're in sort of a influx, or I don't know the proper word for it, but anyway, they're in between having a community officer. And once a community officer would be in place, and that would be an added addition to this committee. So perhaps at this time, if we leave it as one member of council only until we determine the exact route, because I know there was terms of reference developed by the committee and a bylaw as well to be presented to council for consideration, and it just has not got here yet. Where that is at, perhaps maybe our municipal enforcement clerk would know, and she might be able to provide that background to council, and perhaps our director of municipal, sorry, I'm stumbling, our emergency services would be able to provide us at another meeting that background. He may, Director Andrews may know of it too, where that is.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Blatz, with regards to that. I know that there was a terms of reference done, and I had mentioned earlier about it not being presented yet. It was supposed to be presented this fall. So I think we can try to get that together for council to review, if that's a possibility. Mayor Dahl first, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Blatz, for sharing that. With all due respect, I would have to say I wouldn't support having council on this. I still have to be able to see, in my own opinion, to seek to understand where is the advisory part of this committee? Where is the public that's supposed to be the advisory part of this without having the elected officials once again sitting at the table?
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I guess my comment is somewhat similar. I'm not sure the benefit of the committee yet, having been a councillor for approaching 1 year relative to the advisory piece. I certainly recognize the importance of protection, protective services, policing, and I would hesitate to do anything that would shut down that medium and that resource and exchange of information. I'm just not sure how and what this committee has done to help facilitate that flow. You've talked about the terms of reference, and maybe that's a part of the overall mandate and so on, and getting clarity. I certainly don't think there's a need for two, if this committee continues, I certainly don't think there's a need for two elected officials. Can certainly go down to one. I also look, we have Staff Sergeant Wright appearing before us, is it quarterly, with his updates and so on, and I think given where we're at as a town, with our Director of Protective Services and Community Policing and the Staff Sergeant, I think they've got a pretty good handle on what's happening in town. So I need a bit of convincing as to how this advisory committee could go to the next level. I certainly don't see more than one elected official being involved.
Councillor Walsh.
Yeah, I guess without a terms of reference to follow, but I'm agreeing that no elected official should be on a public advisory committee. The public advisory committee is there to advise council. Why would you want to have a council advising council? From way back, we just always made the decision that public advisory committees were members at large in the community, and if there's reasons for them to be there, to do what they need to do. But yeah, not having a terms of reference, and I just wouldn't support it, the way the composition especially is today.
Thank you. Councillor Daly, then Mayor Dahl.
I'm just going to be brief here that I, just sitting here thinking about this, and I was thinking the same thoughts as Councillor Wilson on this, that, yeah, where is the place for councillors to be on this committee, and also what is the value that we're getting out of this committee coming back to council? And I think Councillor Walsh said it very eloquently, that it's an advisory committee to the council. And so thinking about the resources that come and report here to us now, whether that be Director Andrew or Staff Sergeant Wright, I think we're getting good information coming from that protective services side. And so I would agree that I would hesitate to say one, but I'm leaning more towards no counselor sitting on this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. Mayor Dahl.
I would just like our CEO to confirm, I'm not sure if I heard him correctly, is our peace officer also going to be attending these? And he would come back and report to you as well, so why would we need council on there as an advisory committee?
Yeah, I wasn't able to review the draft terms of reference or a draft bylaw. Just our practices clerk has been on leave, but in my understanding, the bylaw officer was also, peace officer was also on the committee as well.
Okay, well, we've gone around on this. I'm not sure if we have a total consensus, although it sounds to me like possibly no councillors on this committee. And, I think we need to just put it back towards the remainder of the committee right now and find out how they would like to proceed, and perhaps sit down with them and have a conversation with Staff Sergeant Wright and our Director Andrew, as well as our peace officer, and see where we go from there, and see what value there is in continuing with this group. And I think it needs to be coming from the grassroots level.
Okay, so then if we just defer this to the organizational meeting, then at the end of the month, we can collect as much information as we can and bring it back for final decision? Okay.
Councillor Blatz.
You should just all note that our legislative clerk has provided us with terms of reference on the screen right now for the police advisory.
These were approved by council on June 2020, June 22, 2020. And if you look at the minutes from that meeting, there's quite a discussion about those committees. Might help to bring clarity back to what the intent was versus what it is.
Well, since we're seeing this at this late date, I think we'll probably have to discuss and read. Councillor Daly, is that what you're going to?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that if this could be shared with us, and then we could have some time to read it through and get our minds wrapped around this, and then talk about it at a later date, that would be great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mayor Dahl.
With the addition that I just heard around the table that there is a brand new terms of reference sitting on the table, so this might not even be relevant. I heard that they developed one, it just hasn't ever been presented, so just keep in mind this might mean nothing to us.
Good point. We'll double check to make sure that there isn't another one out there. I'm sure that there was an updated one. But no, it has not, it did not go to council. It was supposed to be presented at a PNP. Okay, so we'll move along, and have you got clarity on that? Okay, good. So we'll move along to the final one, which is the Public Art Advisory Committee. What's people's thoughts with regards to that? Who sits on that right now? Councillor Blatz, you are. Would you like to speak to this, perhaps?
Well, I would totally support the recommendation here that the Public Art Advisory Committee be dissolved, and that there is an ad hoc committee, and as CEO Williams did comment earlier, that we've got a good group of folks sitting on that committee that could definitely be an ad hoc committee that could report back to administration and have administration bring forward to council anything that would be necessary for us for our information.
Well said. Okay, sounds good. Mayor Dahl?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Blatz, on that. I remind council that Councillor Cummings is not present at this time, but he also sits on the Public Art Advisory Committee and basically shares the same, I believe, comments as Councillor Blatz shared. So again, as far as cost savings go, this committee costs would not incur any overtime for board meetings from town facilitators as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I'll be very brief. Yeah, I support removing any council activity involvement with this. If the committee is going to continue, turn it over to a group of non-elected officials within the community. And we've had a little bit of this discussion, I can't remember in what forum, but we also talked about the mandate. And one of the things that I thought this committee would do is bring suggestions, recommendations about prospective art and art projects, art medium to council. But I think it was said at some point that that's not really the mandate of this committee. So not only do I agree with removing council representation, I think if we have this committee exist, maybe they need to look at what their mandate is and what their objective is and bring ideas. Thanks.
Yeah, Williams?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And to Councillor Wilson's point, I agree as well. That I recall a conversation like that, and there was a direction at a previous date about a larger public art strategy, so to speak. And it's something that is to happen, but it's not a short-term thing, honestly, in terms of the other items on our plate. But I believe bringing this committee kind of into administration's fold, it would allow us to probably more efficiently work through that process as well. So.
I concur. Thank you. Councillor Wilson?
So, and my comment, yeah, I like the choice of word of strategy. So, yeah, I agree that we got other burning topics as well, but I like a strategy going forward, so.
Sounds good. Any other comments? Okay. So, Sia Williams, do you have enough direction then? Okay. Can I get a motion? Councillor Daly?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that I move that we accept for information and/or provide direction to administration to bring back to a future. Now, is this going to be at our future organizational meeting then?
Yes, this will be for the organizational meeting.
Okay.
That should be
For
specified. My
future
apologies.
organizational council meeting. Something like that, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Motion on the floor. Well, I'll ask for any comments or questions anymore. Anything else? Okay. All in favor? And that motion is carried. Thank you very much. And we'll move on then to 7C, the 2022 Federal Election District redistribution. Sia Williams.
Thank you. This topic came to a public forum near us during the week of Alberta Municipalities Convention, so we're not able to attend, but the notification period is still open until the end of October. So as the maps show further down of this discussion paper, our current federal riding is Red Deer Mountain View, I believe it's called, yes. And the proposed redistricting by the Electoral Boundaries Commission is Canmore, Cochrane, Olds. So with that, the first question, does council wish to make a submission to the Electoral Boundaries Commission on this change? And if so, what direction does it wish to take?
Thank you, Sia Williams. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you for presenting that through the chair, deputy mayor, to council. I do agree that council must respond to this. It is very important for us. I would say that we need to be represented. Our regional partners, we've got, for example, our trade commerce. We have MAP, Olds, Mountain View County, Disbury, Carstairs, Cremona, Sundre. We have Olds Auction Mart, we have Olds College, we have Olds Regional Exhibition. We are an agricultural community. I would hate to see 109 years of agriculture be switched over to not have the support that they've had in these past years by the change of these boundaries. I would just open it and start there.
Councillor Daly, then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. And as we've all probably read the article in the local newspaper in the past week, that a lot of those same points have been brought up with the, our partners and our municipalities that we deal with, and that there was a very good suggestion that was brought into that these districts be broken up in a little bit different way to include those partners, that we stay together in the same electoral district, and that there is a way and a means of doing that by looking at the map that's on the screen now, is to take the Airdrie, Cochrane, Canmore district and put it together, and then expand ours to the north to include our corridor partners to the north up to the Red Deer boundary, as you see, and then include Strathmore into the Airdrie. And that was a suggestion that was made in the newspaper article this week. So I would agree with that.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and I agree with the comments previously made. I think, we need to, must, shall respond, or have administration respond, and for all the stated reasons. You look at the commonalities, the common threads that we have relative to agriculture based, where our partnerships are, the geography, the socioeconomic side of things. I think the letter from Innisfail was well stated in terms of the reasons around not changing these boundaries. So I certainly support moving ahead with our reasons for not making any change.
Thank you. Councillor, anybody else? Councillor Walsh?
Yeah, I'm in agreement, and I know the Innisfail letter was sent out around. I agree supporting that letter. It's just, it makes most sense for us to remain within the central region and work together as a central region. Yeah, and I agree. Splitting us into a high tourist area, it just doesn't make sense.
Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, too. And when I did some research on this, too, it would increase, these changes will increase the representation we have in the House of Commons from 34 members to 37, but it could still be done with making changes that would be more applicable to our community and our trade area. And as long as we can follow in with that formula of you have to be 115,206 residents within that, so you have to make sure that however we do that, we fall within the formula and the formatting to become that another riding.
Thank you very much. CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And full disclosure, this is not my purview, but I just want to offer two comments to council. First, the Supreme Court has provided direction on electoral boundary population variances. 25% is the maximum, so they cannot legally skew outside of 25%. So that always comes into effect when we're trying to suggest things. Then from a strategic point of view, obviously I know how council will go and will respond accordingly, but should it not go in our favor with the Boundaries Commission, being in a smaller geographical riding compared to what Bow River is, encompassing probably 10% of the province, we could potentially bring that agricultural flavor to that tourism-based riding as well. And as they say, 2 votes is better than 1, but it's not all lost should it not go in our favor. So.
Thank you very much. Well said, I guess. All right, so would there be an interest then, just throwing this out there, for us to send a letter of support to Innisfail's letter or send our own letter? Certainly, they're talking in their letter about belonging to Bow River and using their 4 to 6 hours certainly we wouldn't be in Bull River. We're looking at the Canmore, Cochrane, and so we would have to change the letter that we would send out to say, to reflect that, I guess. Mayor Dahl,
I'd like to put a motion on the floor.
thank you. Go ahead.
I move that council accept the information as presented and direct administration to prepare a response letter to the Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission of Alberta.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Blatz.
Once we develop such said letter, then will we be sharing it with our colleagues within the area? And also, would we provide that back at our next council meeting for, included in correspondence as well? I'm assuming yes, we would, but.
Absolutely. Through the chair, I'd like to respond to Councillor Blatz. Absolutely. We have too many partners that we work with, and this does need to be shared, as well as for our public and our citizens. Absolutely.
Perhaps we could have the letter put together and then presented at our next council meeting. And then we can approve the letter at that point. Is that all right? Okay. All right, so does that encompass the motion that's on the floor? Legislative Clerk Mikkonen? Or do you need the motion read back to you?
I've captured it as Mayor Dahl has made a motion to have council accept the information as presented and direct administration to prepare a response letter to the
Federal Electoral Boundaries Commission for Alberta. Is that correct? I believe that is.
Okay.
Am I incorrect? I'm pretty sure that's that. If not, I'm certain that legislative clerk will bring it back in the correct format, because we'll be approving it at council.
Yeah, and have the letter come to our next council meeting. Okay, so everybody's familiar with the motion on the floor. Are there any comments, further comments at all? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that vote is carried. Thank you very much. And we'll move on then to solid waste, page 76, 7D. Bill Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. This was brought up a month or so ago. Our current term contract is ending, and our current vendor is open to a one-year extension as per the current contract. The reasons for the contract extension request to council is basically twofold. One is capacity issue, trying to get a new contract sorted with some of the questions we've put to the public, first with the budget survey for 2023, and the resulting engagement I think will have to occur after those questions are seen and presented, I believe, at next council meeting. The second thing is the volatile economic environment we currently exist in, that trying to tender long-term right now is probably not in our favor. Will it be in our favor next year? we shall see, but I guess it's passing the risk down the road, I think. So what you're seeing on your screen is what the numbers we put together for a one-year extension. To extend status quo service levels for solid waste, we are looking at a significant cost increase in the realm of $135,000, driven by inflationary pressures, but also recycling pressures. As you can see, the recycling tippage, regardless of which option we choose, is going from $0 to $190 per metric ton. That's a reflection of the fact that recycling material is not worth as much as it once was when our current agreement was first signed, when they were charging nothing. I'm no economist nor solid waste specialist, but I'm pretty sure it has to go back to the fact that China has stopped buying recycling materials. So recycling is a significant cost with no firm destination that it's getting recycled, because it has to be sorted first, because not all material is recyclable, or saleable. So The cost for 190, according to our waste contractor, is largely due to sorting costs. That before they send it to material that will accept recycling, it has to be sorted to take out what's still valuable. I don't see that getting any better anytime soon, to be quite honest with you. So what we are proposing for council consideration, based on budget survey results that you have not yet seen, but hope you take my word for, is to keep our 3-week rotation, except for green bins from November 1st to April 30th. So starting for 2022, it will remain status quo. On January 1st, green bins will not be picked up until essentially the first week of May. That's what this is proposing. And second thing, our community green bins, the 3-yard compost bins, that we reduce the number from current 100 to 40. And then instead of having them scattered in groups of 2 or 3 around the community, we pick what I'm going to estimate are 6 central locations to have those at and advertise them accordingly. Those locations are to be determined, of course. We do have to take into a few different factors into consideration, rather. And then the final thing, it's more of an efficiency. Find that we do contract multifamily and town facility pickup bins through a separate stream, and we have found a much better savings through amalgamating that into our current contract. So that one is not really an ask because it makes a lot of sense. But so on October 11th, I believe, is council's next meeting. We will have the budget information to back up my statements right now, but the conversation really involves around those 2 service level changes to A, green bin rollouts, and B, 3-yard community compost bins.
Thank you very much, CEO Williams. We're going to go with Councillor Blatz, then Mayor Dahl, and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and through you to CEO Williams. So with removing the green bins from November 1st to April 30th, we're not going to do any, obviously, no additional black bin pickup, because one of the earlier surveys we did, that was a major request from people that during the winter we reduced that, but we increased the black bins. So I think going forward, I fully support this, but we need to make our residents very well aware that we are not going to increase the black bin pickup in its absence because it is an additional cost. And so that we need to make that very clear to our residents. Very clear.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor. All said. Mayor Dahl.
Thank you. So we also need to make very clear for the people that do cook a lot at home and they have a lot of green compost bags, that there's not going to be any recycling of vegetation from November 1st to April 30th. Where are they supposed to put it? Is it still supposed to go in a bag in our black bin now? That's going to be the biggest question I have. There's a lot of people that do home cooking for their families, and they do use that compost bin. They need to know right now that there'll be no more place for them to put their greens and their salad waste and their et cetera, et cetera.
CEO Williams.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and to Mayor Dahl and to Councillor Blatz. Basically, let's say January 1st when this proposed change would take effect. Correct, there will be nowhere to put your compost that will be picked up except for your black bin. Now, theoretically, you can fill your green bin from January 1st until it gets full, whatever that, it will vary household to household, I'm sure. Then the black bin will take the leftovers. If you notice, the tipping fee here is higher with the changes. That's because our contractor is factoring in a higher tonnage through compost being put into black bins in the off seasons, but they're estimating a relatively modest amount. It would be not be wise, obviously, to fill up your black bin with shrubbery on February 15th, because you will kind of you'll have to wait for your trash to come. But I don't have a clear answer if it's going to be a huge problem to a large number of households. But you're right, going back to Councillor Blatt's points, I believe communication will be key. We still have till January 1st, and if council approves this service level change, we will get it out there. And if nothing else, it goes horribly wrong, we can always revert our contract back. But I believe, assuming we want to keep costs stable, given the other pressures we're facing, trying something's better than trying nothing. So.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. And so I just want to make sure my understanding is correct. So the third column there, the 2020, that's all right, 2023 with changes, that reflects what you've referenced here, the green bin pickup and everything else, which basically then holds us flat to 2022 budget.
Essentially, yes. It's obviously a $7,700 increase, which is inconsequential, but typically, our a monthly bill should not increase. Yeah. The difference is, it's with Director Linderman right now, but the Waste Commission is increasing its requisition as well, but it's fairly minor. So we shouldn't have much of a change in that monthly waste stipend.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. My question is about the community yellow bins in the compounds and so forth. Will they continue to be in operation then under this new extension, and or has there been long-term planning for those as well?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Daly. Those are actually operated and owned by the Mountain View Waste Commission. So CAO Weatherwork will actually come back wearing a different CAO hat at a future date, because the commission, that makes up the bulk of our commission's requisition, in fact. And same problem they're facing, the recycling that's going into it is in fact going to the same place your black bin is going at the moment, by and large. Because it's more expensive to sell it, or you just can't sell it. There's no market for it. So they're struggling with that as well. And communications we did receive last week that will be on Council's agenda's correspondence on the 11th will highlight a bit better than I can do right now. But for the time being, it is status quo. But it is at the Commission's discretion, though. We don't necessarily control those.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan, and you've partially, I think, answered my question, because I was going to roll into the blue bin side of things, which is a hot button topic in the Wilson household relative to the cost and the premium we're paying, and that was without seeing this recycling tipping charge increase. So we're going to maintain the blue bucket pickup, even though, just as you said, for all intents and purposes, that waste, we're paying a premium, but that waste is going into landfill. And then my question would be, we renew this with the changes stated, the blue bucket remains as is. Do we have the option down the line, and maybe you will address this coming up, to stop the blue bin pickup? Or are we locked in for a year paying premium fees for stuff to go to the landfill?
CEO Williams.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson and Deputy Mayor. Now, I should preface with, not every piece of recycling goes to the landfill. The sorting costs are what's killing us. I'm comfortable in saying the majority of things people put in their blue bins are diverted to the landfill. Because there's, depending on the market, which I believe is cardboard right now, might be valuable, but paper or glass or tin cans, they're worth nothing. So the sorting cost is what's driving this $190 increase from $0, more or less. The reason why it's a one-year extension, yes, we will be locked in. They always let us increase our service at a cost. That's never an issue. Reducing what we've signed on to, yeah. This is a 12-month extension for blue bin pickup, status quo. Every third week you will have a blue bin truck come to your house and pick it up. But the reason why, lo and behold, the budget survey, again, if you just trust me, for a week, it's basically 50-50 on removing blue bins. Not surprising. So it's really up to council which way that goes. And I'm assuming council will want further engagement on such a question like that, because it also goes into the Mountain View Waste Commission's yellow bins that are at Co-op and the railway track sites. It's the same conversation, basically, because we're paying for both. It's just you don't see it on your utility bill. It's in your taxes, where the Waste Commission gets theirs in, so to speak. But yeah, we'll be locked in for 12 months, but that's why the one-year extension's recommended, that this is a moving needle.
Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. To CAO Williams, when we were at the conference, we stopped and talked to a organization, me and Darren, about recycling. And the lady there did mention that there's legislation that's coming up in the near future about companies that are required to take back their packaging that they've used in the marketing of their product. Not sure, I don't have all the details on it, but would that play into what we're talking about here today with the blue bins?
Thanks, Councillor Daly. That program's called Extended Producer Responsibility. And the question is, nobody yet knows. It's been on the books for a lot of years. And coming from my previous position as a CAO in a county, they've done a great job rolling out that to the agricultural sector because it's much easier. Chemical totes and jugs were, for instance, the first thing that was tackled through a third-party contractor. Baler twine was next. Easy to track. How are they going to do that for household garbage or commercial garbage? I think it's going to be a lot more difficult. But we have no information on that, but it is supposed to be forthcoming. But I don't know when. So.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Councillor Blatz, then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan, again through you to CEO Williams. So going forward, a couple of things too I think that we could do as far as educating our residents in town. We're reducing the number of 3-yard compost bins from 100 to 40. I think people need to realize too how much abuse there was of those bins this summer. It was terrible. I don't know how many social media photographs I saw that people abused it with all kinds of non-compostable items. So I think too that we need to reinforce that when we do our education, and also the calendars that will come out that we all live by with our schedule. Then will we be doing no green, just the blue and the black on a rotation? What would be green will be blank then from January 1st to April 1st or April 30th, and then November 1st to December 31st, so people realize too, because if we don't do that, even if we did green bin and drew a line through it, people would still not probably quite understand the process. So just a question, I wanted to know if that was going to be done as well.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Blatz. You're right. With your second question, we will make new calendars and include them electronically in newspaper and in our utility bill mailouts, and multiple times, because it's bound to not hit everyone. To your first question, just to add on to it, it's something, thanks for reminding me, it was a significant problem this year. I don't know before my time here, but I can't count on two hands how many times I've just heard of or seen our staff inside of those bins around town trying to take out furniture or a carcass or animal carcass. I should clarify that perhaps. I see Doug down there just right with his pen. Yeah, and furniture and whatnot. So yeah, it's a significant issue. So that's why the idea of grouping them in locations, hopefully well-lit locations, would help mitigate that issue. So.
Thank you, CEO Williams. Councillor Wilson, and then Mayor Dahl.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. Just a brief comment and a question, and further to Councillor Daly's comment. Yeah, we did talk to this individual. I do have some contact information. Perhaps I'll pass it on to the CAO, because not only did she talk about the EPR program, she also explained to her where we were at within the town. And she was somewhat surprised when I said some, but not all of our recyclable waste is going into landfill. And she talked about, and I don't know if she was talking specifically to plastics or what, but she said there are still companies that purchase that and they're bailing it. Now, I don't know all the logistics, I don't know if they've reached their maximum level for bailing, but she was surprised that, in our case, stuff was going right to landfill waste. So I'll pass you along that contact info. My question is, just for future reference, with the one-year extension, so we would have to have a decision by when then, like mid-year next year around the further contract, or what would be that timeline?
I believe the ideal timeline would have an RFP out for a 3 to 5 year contract by September of next year, closing probably late September, early October, then a decision by council mid-October. So.
Thank you. Mayor Dahl.
I have a final out-of-the-box question with the green bins, the compost bins. With not using them for several months, is there, or does your administration know of anyone that, can we clean those bins? Is there a place we could take the bins, like a compost bin car wash or something, compost bin car? There's a lot of people that have actually, 3 people, not a lot, 3 people have asked me, how can I ever clean this out? I'd like to clean it out. Just a question out there. People are asking.
CEO Williams.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm going to have to defer to Google on this one. I'm not too sure. Sorry.
Okay. Not sure we have an answer to that one, Mayor Dahl, but possible power washing, and I don't know. Okay, so no more questions from the rest of council. I do have, I guess, not necessarily a question, but maybe a comment. I actually am support all of these decisions going forward. I've mentioned this compost reduction for several years. And I only, when you take a look at the people on my block, there's maybe 1 or 2 people that put their compost out in the wintertime. I've seen them go around and collect, maybe 2 or 3 of these rollouts. So I always thought that it was kind of a waste. And I do compost during this time, but I put my bag in my compost and it gets picked up in April. Because I don't even put it out until April. I don't bother slushing it through the snow for 1 or 2 bags in the middle of the winter time. And you're not going to get any smell in the middle of the winter time either, so you don't really have to worry about cleaning them out. I've never done it, and I've done the same thing and for the last 8 years since I've been in this town. So I've always done it, and I've never actually filled the compost box up during that time period. I pretty much stop at this same time period, the November 1st till April 30th. So I think it's a great way of saving some cost. And as well, with these big bins, you mentioned at one point about eliminating them altogether, so reducing them down to 40 or even less than that wouldn't be the worst thing ever. I do agree that there was a lot of abuse. I would go to dump my grass and see a bin full of tree branches. Like I never saw the carcasses or the furniture, but tree branches sticking out that it says right on the thing, no tree branches. So I agree with Councillor Blatz that there needs to be continual communication out there with our community to say, please do not do this because it costs us a lot of money to have to deal with all of the stuff that's not for those bins. So thank you very much. All right, can we get a motion on the floor with regards to this? Anybody? Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I make the motion that we accept the solid waste contract extension report as presented and direct administration to bring back to a future council meeting for finalization.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that motion's carried. Thank you. And we'll move along now to monthly reports, and CEO verbal update. It's all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just have a few quick things. First, the province of Alberta, they are pushing the provincial police study pretty hard. And a new thing you may have seen, that they are offering $30,000 grants for municipalities to study a standalone or regional police service. So we are attending some of this information sessions, and you'll be seeing this coming forth to council for discussion at a future date. We are agnostic when it comes to this matter, but if I was a betting man, based on the amount of attention it's given by the province, I think this is a foregone conclusion. So maybe it's best to be prepared than not. But just so you're not somewhat blindsided when you see this at a future council or PMP committee meeting, that we are attending these sessions, and we'll have information for you to consider at that time. Budget is coming up. Administration has started preparing, and we're looking to do a special meeting of council late October, early November. We'll have more information very soon, but if you have any dates in that area, I've seen some December dates where people are away, but late October, early November, if you're away for any of those dates or they don't work for you, if you don't mind letting myself or Marcy know. We'll probably start with one and then do a longer session in later November is the tentative plan right now. ONET branding, this was in the minutes from September's PNP. You will see starting very soon with the changes to the town's welcome signs on highways 27 and 2A. We'll be hanging the chloroplast signs. Some of them currently say home of Old Oktoberfest. We'll still keep those and advertise seasonally for that event, which was a great success. But those signs were replaced with an ONET sign, more or less. So, in consultation with our new business partners, 4 Networks and Nation Fiber, we had kind of a slogan drawn up that doesn't quite trespass on the ONET brand. It still keeps it intact, but a direction where they want to go, and that administration and council, I believe, can get behind pretty steadily. Following that, we'll be looking at town facilities for advertising as well. And what we're waiting on there is the Mountain View Power transfer to finish. And we want to do both, not necessarily in the same ad, but in the same facilities. And until that transition is finished and officially in the town's name, it's a little premature to start advertising just yet, in my opinion. But that is just waiting on some final details. And the final thing, Senior Peace Officer Paul Wright, as of this afternoon, received his official appointment finally from Department of Justice and Solicitor General. So we now have 2 official CPOs and 1 who has the ability to enforce moving traffic violations. So it's a long time coming, and we're still working on the second due to some issues with Solgen, but that's been a time in the making. So. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO Williams. So, I'll open the floor to any questions. Anybody have any questions for the CEO on any of the items that he brought forward? Nope. All right. See you then. That was good. Can I get a motion? Councillor Blatz.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ryan. I move that we accept the CEO verbal update report as presented for information.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. We still have that on the table, so motion to adjourn. Councillor Walsh.
Motion to adjourn.
At
4:24.
All right, thank you very much. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.